football, overlords for giving us just a phenomenal 4 games, and 3 of them absolutely bonkers to watch. Storylines galore.
Mm-hmm. Well, 4 out of the 5 games.
Excuse me, 4 out of 5. Yeah, there's one more tonight.
The Sunday night was the only stinker yesterday, and we could potentially get a 5th one tonight with the Texans and Steelers. But yeah, I think outside of the 49ers, Eagles, and then last night's Sunday night game, every other game was decided in the final minute or 90 seconds, I think, with the final score, which is what you want. Again, phenomenal. We didn't get to talk about it. Phenomenal Thursday night game with Miami and Ole Miss, one of the best playoff games we've ever seen. And then Indiana just did what Indiana's been doing and throttled Oregon on Friday night. Kind of expected, I guess. But yeah, everything else outside of that, really good.
So a week from tonight, we'll get the national championship game, and we'll kind of get the stage set for that as we go through the week, and we come off of, again, a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday that saw just a lot of absolutely phenomenal football. We'll get back into that Indiana-Oregon game again that I thought would be close, and it wasn't. And it wasn't close.
It didn't take long.
Yeah, I was going to say it was a noogie festival from the get-go for Oregon, and not one that they enjoyed. I saw some – we'll get to this right off the bat. Dan Lanning, I saw some tweets and stuff about being a choker and not being able to get it done in the college football playoff, that, last year they get bludgeoned by Ohio State. This year it's Indiana. I just think he ran into 2 buzzsaws. I'm not like a Dan Lanning can't get it done kind of guy. I just think his program ran into 2 programs who, in the last 2 years, who were just playing at their elite, absolute best.
Was there anybody doubting Ohio State is the best team in college football at the end of last year?
Yeah, I mean, they were after they lost to Michigan, but I think it was one of those things where we still knew Ohio State was good. It was just the storyline of, you lost to Michigan again, and Sharon Moore at that point.
Yeah. And so, again, Oregon loses to them in the Rose Bowl, and then it looks like Indiana, unless Miami's defense just clamps down on them next Monday night, probably going to win the national championship as an undefeated team. So there's no shame in that. I did see people pointing out, like, all right, he's never beaten Kirby Smart, 1-1 against Ryan Day, hasn't beaten Kurt Signetti now. So when you're playing the higher profile guys, you're coming up a little bit short. He's still really good. You know what I mean? That's a really good roster. I think Dan Lanning within the next 5 years probably ends up winning a national championship. He's getting closer, and that's the thing. Like last year, they got the bye and they got blown out by Oregon. This year, by Ohio State. This year, they had to play in the first round, took Air James Madison, beat Texas Tech 23-0 down there in Miami in the Orange Bowl, and then ran into the best team in Indiana and lost. So they are progressing and getting closer. And again, I think Dan Lanning, with the next handful of years, probably wins himself a national championship. But until then, he's going to have to deal with, can he get it done? Can he get over that hump? He's not into James Franklin territory yet. He's got a long way to go before he ever gets there of like, he's just this guy that can't win that big game. He's still very young as a coach. So we'll get into a lot of that. The transfer portal for South Carolina over the weekend was absolutely wild. I'm kind of interested to hear what everybody has to say as it pertains to where do you grade South Carolina right now on their transfer portal takes? How do you have South Carolina doing, Tyler? Because, at the end of the day right now, I said this a lot last week, it's great. It is phenomenal. South Carolina is lighting the world on fire. They're getting all the pieces they need. It means nothing, quite frankly, though, when we get to the month of, it'll be September 5th, 12th, 19th, 26th, October, so forth and so on. Yeah. So then we'll make a proper judgment and go from there. But the question that I would have for you is, how do we go about grading this transfer portal haul, just looking at names on paper and what they've done? South Carolina does lose another player yesterday in Jatavius Shivers. We'll circle back to that with the offensive line. But how do you go about grading it, and does it just give you hope? Are you just happy now? Do you not care? What's the kind of general consensus as we head toward the middle of January? I'm pretty optimistic about it. If I'm giving it a grade right now, I think you're talking probably about a B+-ish range with still more opportunities to add. And I think the way we look at transfer portal ads is different depending on where the position groups are. Okay. Like you get a guy in Nitro Tuggle where you can go and watch his highlight tape of what he did at Purdue, and that's a flashy, fun guy on offense. I'm excited to see him play. But a lot of the guys they've added out of the 16, basically half of them have been offensive linemen, to where it's a little bit more of, okay, kind of a wait and see how they're going to fit in this system at this level and all that kind of stuff. But that's obviously an area of need, considering how many guys, have left in the portal over the past, couple weeks. Carius Peak was the number 1 offensive tackle in the portal. Big get for him. It also speaks to the fact to me that Carolina's spending here. Like, we don't know what the numbers are. We're not going to know what the numbers are, but Carolina does seem to have funds to go out there and get some high-level guys that have played a lot of football, that have been good contributors to their respective schools. Again, where that stacks up in the SEC and nationally, I don't know, but they're not pinching pennies, it doesn't seem.
It doesn't appear. It doesn't appear, and you're right. We don't know for certain what exactly their budget is or how much they're spending or what they're doing. I see people taking guesses. I see a recent tweet. I think it was from Stewart. No, I think it was somebody, one of the national writers, who estimated that Texas is in the $40 million mark.
I did see that, which that's 15 more than they had last year, apparently, according to Sark. Which he's not going to be honest about that anyway.
So, we'll kind of see again what they end up electing to do, but or how that pays off. When I say what they end up electing to do, how that pays off when we get to the month of September, October, November, and also.
Because again, Texas, by all accounts, had the most expensive roster this year and didn't even make the playoffs. So just because you pay for it doesn't mean it's going to net you the best results. You still got to develop these guys, coach them up. So, again, having the highest payroll doesn't guarantee success.
So we'll get into all of that this afternoon. Plus, we got to look back at the basketball game on Saturday. Tyler, I was there. Last week I banged the drum. I said people got to come out. You got to come out. You got to be a part of this team. You've got to be. I think I'd finally talked myself into Friday saying they as a fan, you got to be the wind beneath their wings.
Okay.
You got to carry them a little bit against the Bulldogs. Well, I give credit. I thought, for my expectation, the fans were there.
Seemed to be.
The fans were there. I thought that the fans did their part, and for roughly 32 minutes. The basketball team did their part, and it looked like they were heading toward maybe a season-changing type victory. And then it wasn't there anymore, and you lose the game.
Seemed like the ghost of last season of not being able to close out games against really good opponents reared its ugly head, because you did nothing offensively for the last basically 5 minutes of that game on Saturday. Still were in it. Still had an opportunity there at the very end. Michi draws it a little bit closer with his late 3 there. But, yeah, if you just are more functional on offense for half of those minutes, 2.5 minutes compared to 5, then you probably win that game, because you had done well enough up to that point, put yourself in that position, but unfortunately didn't end up happening. Now you're 1-2 in conference play.
So we'll get to all of that. A lot to discuss today. Transfer portal, wild card weekend, college football playoff, basketball game. That's just some of it. Jamie Bradford set to join us around 2:15 later today as well. So a lot to do, a lot to discuss. If you want to be a part of the program, 803-404-6100. That's how you can weigh in this afternoon. You're listening to Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, producer, the captain, Dave Adair. The family's back together. It is the halftime show. Bill Gunner for AAA Heating and Air. All right, have you looked, by the way, have you looked at the weather coming up? We're about to have a serious cold front roll through here. It's going to be quite chilly the next several days. I think we get one good day. But my question to you is, your heating unit working properly, or do you need a little bit of help? Well, guess what? AAA Heating and Air is there for you, and they're ready to help you. You just need to give them a phone call today and speak with them about any of your needs. Maybe you just need repairs, or maybe you need a brand new heating and air unit. Well, if you need a brand new one, guess what? You're in luck. AAA Heating and Air is taking care of their customers right now. You can get guaranteed financing. You heard that right. guaranteed financing. No need to worry about that. How about a 15-year parts and labor guarantee? That's right, 15 years. You can trust AAA Heating and Air, and no payments or interest for 12 months. For more information, give them a phone call, 803-677-1500. Tell them Bill Gunner sent you.
All right. Tough loss there against a really good team, athletic team. Team plays hard. They're well coached. They got a really good coach. I respect what Mike White does in this league as much or more than anybody. He's a veteran. So I thought our effort was really good. I thought our defensive effort in particular was really good. There's a lot of things that have to happen in order to win a game, particularly against a really talented team. And one of those happened. We defended at a high enough level. I mean, there were some mistakes and some fat you can trim off of that for sure, but you know, this is not a game of perfection. I thought we did a pretty good job defensively overall. You're holding a team like that 23 points under their average of what they were averaging when they came into the game. And you know, they've been over 100 so many times that that's just what they do. So I thought execution of our strategy defensively was good. I thought, honestly, we had a bunch of looks down the stretch that, and throughout the game, we could have played better offensively, performed better, I should say. The way we played, I thought, was pretty good overall offensively. We just had a couple guys didn't perform the way that we needed to, and then there's this equation that's of, if this thing's good this day, this thing's got to be, or bad this day, this thing's got to be good this day. And today was probably a day we needed to make all our free throws. We've been a good free throw shooting team. It just wasn't that day for that. So, I liked some of the things that I saw with our team, particularly on the defensive end. Just as frustrating to not, when you put yourself in position to win, to not win.
Those are the words of Lamont Paris on Saturday afternoon, and there's a lot that he says is right. South Carolina played, in my opinion, maybe the best game of the season on Saturday. They did so many things right, but Tyler, here's the name of the game with this program.
Mm-hmm.
There's no margin for error. And you simply can't have that loss. Like, I can come in here, and if this was Lamont Paris year 2, or if there was a few wins, and say if there was a win against Virginia Tech and Butler or Northwestern and Clemson, maybe if there was a few, you'd go, all right, that's okay. Bad way to finish. Maybe you're more upset about the bad, and you go, all right, but there's 15 more conference games. That's the problem. That's where I stand. Like, you give that, you get that, and then you go so cold over the last 18, I believe is what it was, and you blow the game. And Georgia's a good team. Let's give Georgia a lot of credit, all right? Georgia's a good basketball team. You didn't lose to the YMCA over 30 crowd running around out there. You lost to a good ranked Georgia team. But the truth is there's no margin for error with this program. If Lamont Paris doesn't win, Lamont Paris will likely not be here next year.
And he's right. I mean, you played a really good defensive game, held them to 75 points, which, again, averaging about 98 points per game for that Georgia team this year. They put up 100 against Auburn a couple weeks ago. And then overtime, game they played. So you did a really good job on that side of the basketball. But the areas of offense that we've talked about are your areas of specialty this year, 2-point shooting and free throw shooting. You fell short. Now, yeah, you had another game where you shot under 30% from three. That's almost expected at this point, right? What they did the other day against LSU in that win, that's right. The anomaly. If they have a night like that, that's the exception, not the norm. We expect them to not be great when it comes to 3-point shooting, but inside the arc, in the paint, when it comes to getting the free throw line, that's where we expect them to play their best, and they didn't do that on Saturday. And again, if you just make a couple more free throws, miss 6 of them on Saturday, make a couple more of those easy layup type of shots or fadeaway jumpers, then you win this game. It's that simple, and you didn't do that on Saturday, and that was a missed opportunity against a really good team.
No, and again, you look at where this team is, and now they're 10-6. The other part to this is you go on the road to an Arkansas team that got just thumped by Auburn over the weekend, and Arkansas, some think, is the best team in the SEC. I don't know about that. I don't think the SEC has an elite team. I know Vanderbilt's undefeated, and I know Vanderbilt's really good.
Arkansas is one of the better teams, though.
Yes, that's okay. That's fair. But then you go to Auburn, who, athletically speaking, doesn't take a backseat to anybody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sold on Stephen Pearl, and I'm not sold on Auburn, but I do know this. Auburn has no problem with athleticism.
No. And
is going to out-athlete South Carolina down there in the jungle next Saturday afternoon. But with that being said, that's why you simply, a home game, there's 18 conference games, 9 of them at home. You can do the math on that. Well, now you've lost to Vanderbilt and to Georgia. All right, now you've only got 7 left, and none of them are going to be easy.
Well, and think about that. Again, we're just talking about one game here, but the perception of going in to the Arkansas and Auburn back-to-back at 2-1 compared to 1-2,
right,
where you say, okay, theoretically, yeah, maybe you lose both those games. You're still 2-3 at that point in time, and still are right there on the bubble in terms of being 500 in conference play and trying to maintain that gap as you go through the final however many games left in conference play. At that point, I guess it'd be 13 left. But now you're looking at the potential of maybe being 1-4 in conference play if you can't get one of those, and then you're just having to dig uphill the rest of the way. And again, in a season, as you mentioned a moment ago, where you don't have a margin for error, having to dig yourself out of a 1-4 hole to try and get around 500 in conference play to make anything out of the season going to be a lot easier said than done.
So we can break it down. We can analyze everything and tell you what happened and why they didn't close out with the 8-point lead. But here is Lamont Paris again after the game on Saturday. This is the head coach's explanation for not being able to close out the 8-point lead.
Yeah. You know, I'll have to watch it to see what some of the specific things we did defensively were, but just things I know off the top of our head. So if I look at this stretch, and I remember, these are things that I remember specifically, not to call anyone out, but these are just plays that I remember. I know Michi got a wide open three. Elijah had an open three. Elijah passed up an open three and then threw to Michi for an open three. Miles had an open three in the corner. Kobe was at the basket and we threw like a little lob to him and he caught it and missed it right at the rim. We ran a hammer play to Miles in the corner for a wide open three, even down to Mike's layup at the very end that we missed. There just were, we got none of those to happen. I mean, all those plays I just said all happened in the last whatever the amount of time was. I don't want to make something up, but I remember they happened in succession, and that led to a stretch where we weren't scoring while they were. We fouled them some, you know, but I don't know how many free throws they shot. Even they're averaging 22 makes a game, so I assume it was under that, but. Anyway, I think that was it, was the main thing, was that we had a bunch of plays, and it got that way in the LSU game a little bit, but then Elijah made a big play, too, actually, around the basket, you know, and he got a similar shot in this game that went in and rolled around and then came out, right? And you need that one. The guys need that one to say, okay, 8 turned to 6, 6 turned to 4, whatever that is, let's play this for this one possession versus 6 stays at 6. So then they score, 6 goes to 8. Well, now we got to have something down here, so you get a little tighter when you get the wide open three. And so I just think I think that was probably the thing that right off the top of my head stands out as to what would potentially caused a differential towards the end of the game.
And he's right. That's the other part of this. That's, to me, Tyler, watching the game is the most frustrating part. Georgia didn't necessarily do anything to come back and take the lead. Georgia maintained, right? Georgia stayed steady. South Carolina didn't make shots. South Carolina fell off. He's right. Those looks that he just mentioned, they weren't contested. It's not like Georgia played elite-level defense. It's not like Georgia did something that threw South Carolina out of rhythm. Michi Johnson had an open look. Elijah Strong had an open look. Miles Studi had an open look. These are guys, those three in particular, have roughly about 15 years of basketball experience between the three of them. They are the dudes who have to make a shot when it is time to make a shot, and none of them did that on Saturday. The trio combines of Johnson, Strong, and Studi to go 3 of 15 from 3-point. Excuse me, 3 of 15 from 3-point range.
Yeah, and you go back to, again, the game against LSU the other day where that shot was falling, that probably instilled confidence that you could go out there and do it again. But as the game wore on, it's kind of one of those things saying, okay, this isn't working for us. Do we need to find different opportunities, different ways to score, because we can't rely on this? Now you get to the point there at the end where you're trying to make up the ground. Obviously, Michi made that 3 there with about 5 seconds to go. That was very valuable, but some of those shots they were putting up from half court or close to half court, it's like, man, I feel like you can take a better opportunity, give yourself a better opportunity to score there that they weren't doing as the game went along.
Gamecocks were 7 of 24 from 3-point range, 24 of 58 from the field as a whole. Just 9 turnovers. 3 of those come by Michi Johnson, who had 5 assists and 3 turnovers. So he played, outside of shooting, played a decent ball game. But Tyler, again, now you take a step back. You move out from that game. Arkansas again this week. Auburn coming up on Saturday. Oklahoma next week, if you really want to push it out. Part of my rant last week was winning this ball game so that fans stay invested. And I think that's my concern a little bit here. I already see some of the text coming in talking about giving up, and I understand. People went and did their job on Saturday, in my opinion. If this team comes back here on 1-4, it's hard. It's hard for me to sit here next Monday or whatever and tell fans you need to get out there for the Oklahoma game.
Yeah, because it's going to feel like you're not playing for anything at that point.
Yeah.
Because again, and again, I know it's just one game, but there's a big difference between coming back from that stretch at potentially 2-3 and being 1-4. Where again, we kind of look at that 500 record in conference play as something to kind of shoot for to get yourself at that point, at least in the conversation for the tournament. If the SEC ends up being the kind of conference we think they're going to be this year. But clawing yourself out of a 3-hole deficit 5 games into it just doesn't seem like something that this team is built to. I don't deny the fact they can go out there and have a magical game every now and then where the shots falling, you play defense really well and beat a really good team. But I don't know if it's going to be consistent enough to where you're racking up, 7, 8, 9 wins in conference play this year.
803-404-6100. So that's where they are. And look, Lamont Paris will be the one that takes the fall for it at the end of the day. And we'll see again. That's why I said last Tuesday, it's likely the year of Jeremiah Donati, who we will learn more about as an athletic director. The season's not over. I will say, listening to Lamont there in those, Tyler, in those clips, he sounds like a guy energized and feels like his team is coming together, but you can't have it come together too late.
Well, you've seen in patches them do what they need to do. Again, offensively the other day against LSU, defensively against Georgia. It's like, can you find a way to put it all together for one whole game? Yeah. That's the biggest question against these good teams, which is what we just have not seen them be able to do, really.
803-404-6100, how you can weigh in if you want to do something on the basketball. Come back and get to some of these text messages a couple of y'all are weighing in with, and we'll switch up directions here and go with a little bit of the transfer portal. The good news from the weekend. Poof. We'll talk about that. Some of y'all have weighed in on your grades thus far. You're listening to Tyler Head, Captain David Dare, and Bill Gunner. It is the Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for Mid-State Roofing, where for nearly 30 years, Mid-State Roofing has been the leader in the roofing and waterproofing industry. You heard that right. For 30 years, long time, but they've done it because of incredible customer service. That's right. Being there for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because unless you're aware of something I'm not, leaks can't tell time. They don't know what time it happened. So a leak might occur at your home or your business at midnight, at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. Well, guess what? Mid-State Roofing is there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, ready to take your phone call. 803-356-1919. Again, that's 803-356-1919. That's how you can reach them. Again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You'll speak with an on-call technician or a Mid-State Roofing employee. So wherever you're at in this great state, give Mid-State Roofing a call today. You know what they say. If you've got a leak, let Mid-State Roofing take a peek. It is 12:33 on a Monday. Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain Dave Adair, talking a little basketball. And Tyler, let's get to some of these text messages that have come in. Now, look, I sat here last week and banged the drum for the basketball team and said, you got to go out and support them. Mm-hmm. They deserve your support, especially after that win on the road at LSU. And I'm not going to tell you need to stop supporting them. That's not why I'm going to sit here.
You were out there yourself Saturday.
I was there, and we'll get with Jamie Bradford. I was at the Steve Taneyhill Celebration of Life. Great job down there by that. Patrick Davis did a phenomenal job, and all the people that spoke, absolutely terrific. And I got a plan for Taneyhill weekend.
Okay. I know we brainstormed about this back in December.
We'll get to this coming up in the next segment. I got a plan. Let's go stay with the basketball before we get to the transfer portal thing for a minute. We got a lot of show. I get it. There is a fine line, and maybe that line is becoming thinner and thinner and thinner, Tyler, as the evolution of college fandom, spending money, supporting your team, becomes closer and closer to professionalism.
Right.
Okay? I am of the belief that you don't need a team to win to root for them, to go and support them.
Okay.
At the college level.
Okay.
I do think that's starting to change. Players being paid. It's no longer amateurism. It's professionalism.
Right.
Players now have zero loyalty. Coaches have never had loyalty, but players now have zero loyalty to their university. It's hard to invest yourself in a team. And I'll give you a perfect example. I really like South Carolina's freshman core of Eli Ellis, Grant Polk, Hayden Simeon, and E.J. Walker. It's hard for me to tell fans I can do what I want and they can do what they want, but it's hard for me to tell fans you need to be invested in this group and go support them, and we're building for the future when I can't guarantee you Eli Ellis will be here next year or any of those other guys.
That is a frustrating thing about when you're having a season like last year where you struggled, this year where it seems to be you're kind of trending that same direction where it's hard to get excited about the future because you don't know what it's going to look like. And you bring up a really good point there talking about those freshmen. And, Eli Ellis, again, for as up and down as the season's been for the team, he's gone out there and gave you some really good performances. And if this year continues to trend in the wrong direction, part of you wants to say, okay, yeah, this year's tough, but man, wait till Ellis comes back next year as a sophomore. What's he going to be able to do then? The other side of your brain says, if he's going to be here, though, because right. Guarantee you there's going to be a lot of programs around the country they're going to throw money at him, say, hey, come play for us. Don't play for South Carolina. We'll get you on a squad that's, going to go to the NCAA tournament. You can do this and you can do that. And that's the case for all these guys, right? And especially, when you look at teams that are struggling, that have players that have the opportunity to go elsewhere, you're almost kind of serving as a developmental ground for other programs. And you would hate to see EILS end up at a Tennessee or something like that.
Louisville's the one that everybody's going to look at because of his brother.
Right. Yeah, especially because of his brother saying, man, you hope you're not developing him to go be better somewhere else, but that's the reality of college sports today. And you bring up a good point because we've talked about it before. The passion this fan base has for all of its sports teams is something that should be admired, especially for something like basketball that historically doesn't have a ton of success making the tournament, winning the tournament and stuff like that. They still go out there and support them as much as I've seen any other program around the country, year in, year out. But it's that believability of you're building on something that's getting harder and harder to grasp onto because you have so much movement. This team this year is entirely new. I mean, you got a couple guys that came back from last year. Studi, Michi Johnson obviously came back for a second time around here at Carolina. But this team, for the most part, was entirely new. And it's hard to latch on to new guys. And then again, as the season rolls along, thinking these guys may not be here the year after that, of like building and saying, okay, here's what I can look forward to next year, as opposed to, all right, going to have to go out there in the portal and restart this whole thing over again.
So, that's why I say it's hard for me to now come in and be like, all right, you have to go and support this team. Get out and support this team. With that being said, Brad weighs in and says, if losing to a top 25 team, you played good enough to win, makes you quit on this team, then you're a bad fan, period.
But, we've seen this movie a lot before, and Jack and I talked about this earlier. you had both of the Final Four teams in the SEC on the ropes last year. Auburn and Florida, both here at Colonial Life Arena, with opportunity to win those games, didn't end up winning them, couldn't close out those games, and you lost. And, like, yes, there is something to be said about playing those kind of teams close, but eventually you have to flip it over and start winning those games. And you brought it up earlier. If you're doing that, if what happened on Saturday was Lamont Paris's first year, you say, okay, man, you came up short against a really good team, but that's something to build off of. When you're in year number 4, it's like, no, this has become a trend of losing these games, unfortunately, against these really good teams. When you put yourself in position to win them, that just kind of becomes the identity of what this team is. So I wouldn't say you're a bad fan for feeling disgruntled about that, because you've seen it so many times before now, especially in the past 2 seasons.
Let's hear, this is Lamont Paris talking about winning being a challenge, because I don't know if this is going to make people happy here. We know winning is difficult. Winning is difficult. Everybody in the SEC is investing money and trying to win. But let's hear Lamont Paris after the game talking about how winning is a challenge.
You know, and it could have gone the other way, but I had a good view of it myself. I thought the timing of it was, I mean, based on what was happening during the game, we needed that to happen for us, I thought. And so sometimes that's the component that makes you pull the trigger on it. Other times, maybe, let's say, it's just a back and forth normal deal, and you're like, all right, I got to save one for towards the end. Like, let's say when Mike could have had the steal at the end and it fumbles out of bounds. Let's say it was 2 guys. You want to save it for that if you can, just so even if you really believe it's off of Mike, you're going to call at that time just to see what the video says. It may say something different than what your naked eye saw. But I do like the system. You know, the one thing that I personally would like to see is that if officials could re-officiate the play, right? Because let's say you and I are going for a loose ball, and you get there before me, which is probably predictable based on your speed versus my speed, and then I grab you, right? And it's clearly a foul. It's not called in the game, not clearly to them at the time, but upon review, it's a foul. And then it ends up going off of you as we get it down to the nth degree on the slow motion frame by frame. I do believe you should be able to re-officiate that scenario, so that's like, yes, it did go off of you, but Lamont grabbed your whole arm, and that's why you didn't get the ball. That would be the one thing that I would like to see change. So what they do in the NBA, and in the NBA, the vast majority of reviews that they ask for, the challenges that the coaches ask for, are to do with fouls more than anything.
All right, I messed that one up. That was him talking about winning a challenge. But
which they did on Saturday. That's something they did win on Saturday, was a challenge.
They did. 803-404-6100 text ways, and I don't see any difference in what Lamont has done and Shane Beamer. I actually think he's done a better job if we're looking at talent he's had compared to what football has. Football gets a pass every year. No, it doesn't. Trust me, it doesn't. And basketball ridiculed. If there's any issue with basketball, it's recruiting, but he's a great coach. That's on him. You can't. He buys the groceries. He buys the groceries. He recruits the players. Okay, great. So then right there's your difference. There's your difference. Shane Beamer recruits better groceries. Maybe he doesn't do good enough with them. That's fine. If you want to tell me that, I'm not going to argue with you. But you got to recruit better. It's the SEC. This team was they're competitive. Last year's team didn't gel. I don't know what was wrong. Last year's team was not as bad as the record indicated. They weren't. That wasn't a bad basketball team last year. They were on the court. I don't know if that makes sense. Like that team that they trotted out last year had good players. They had an NBA draft pick, a lottery draft pick. Nick Pringle is a solid SEC player. He's done it at Auburn. He's doing it at Arkansas. They had Jamari Thomas was a fine point guard. Like they had players, and whatever reason it didn't gel. And we could sit down for hours. Lamont Paris could tell you his opinions. I could tell you my opinions. You could tell me your opinions. But that wasn't a bad basketball team. And I don't particularly think this is a bad basketball team. Like, I know people, Tyler, I don't know where you stand on this. People look at it and be like, boy, it's not a talented team. But when you say, well, it's with recruiting, I don't know if the team is, like, talent-wise that bad. You know, are there flaws? Yes.
Yeah.
Supremely. They lack in the post. But I don't want to hear like, well, you know, recruiting's an issue. He's the recruiter.
Yeah. Well, they don't have nothing, right? Like
right.
You have pieces that can do good things. Now, are you the most talented team in the SEC? No. but do you have pieces that can make you competitive? Absolutely. But you're right. I mean, these are the guys that Paris went out and got. Now, again, there are the components of what funds you have to spend and money and all that kind of stuff competing against other schools around the country. But these are the guys that you brought in with the belief that they can help you out and make you into a better team. And, unfortunately, right now we're not seeing the results of that yet.
He knew. He knew what he had to do this year in terms of getting a roster. And look, again, I don't think he's assembled some horrible roster that couldn't compete in the SoCon. But they've got to win games. And that's what I say. Like, Tyler, that's to my point. Like, the margin for error has become so thin because you're talking about, if you kind of don't get it together here, the potential to have 3 losing seasons in 4.
Yep. And then we're making a change, more likely than not. And then you're starting over again. Because you know what happens when a coach gets fired? Well, then a bunch of guys leave, and you're starting over from scratch in the portal.
Yeah, and look, in this day and age, I'm not saying that that's a good or a bad thing. It's just it's a lot easier than it used to be. Just like it's easier for guys to leave. 803-404-6100. All right, I'll give you. We'll get to the transfer report. We got a whole nother hour and a lot to get to there. We'll come back to basketball as well. But coming up next, I came up with it.
Okay.
The Steve Tannehill tribute.
All right.
It's pretty simple.
Okay.
And it all ties in and it works. I'll explain that as, again, Jeff O'Hara, our buddy Cox by 90, put together a great event down in 5 Points Saturday after the game. Tribute to Steve Tannehill. A lot of great former Gamecocks were down there. I'll tell you all about that. You're listening to the Halftime Show. 12:49 on a Monday as we move toward the middle of January. We'll get into some transfer portal talk. Talk a little basketball right now. On Saturday, South Carolina goes out. They're competitive. And they were, to an extent, competitive against Vanderbilt. They were competitive against Clemson and Butler and Northwestern, Virginia Tech. But they got to win the games. And that's kind of the thing here is you're in year 4. And, right now against quad 1 competition, against the competition, you're 1-6. And that's kind of what I'm meaning with the basketball thing. You have to win these games. There's just not a margin for error, especially when you compare the first 3 years, 2 of them having losing records, 2 of them being some of the worst seasons ever in South Carolina basketball history. One, obviously, being one of the best basketball seasons ever in South Carolina history. A real kind of different end of the spectrum type seasons for all of us. But in year 3, in a game like that, quite frankly, for 32 minutes, you've outplayed Georgia. Tyler mentioned it. The defensive effort to limit Georgia, who was one of the highest scoring teams in the nation. Were they the highest scoring team in the nation coming in?
They were one of them. It was up there. I don't know if they were number 1 or not, but again, they were averaging 98 points per game, and it put up some high marks in SEC play so far. So, yeah, you held them to a low number that theoretically should have given you an opportunity. But, again, the offense failed you on Saturday.
Well, down the stretch, down the last 8 minutes. And, again, the
they
other
closed out the end of the first half, too, wasn't great either.
No, you're right about that.
4.5 minutes. I don't think they had a field goal the last 4.5 minutes there either.
And the part about that, the final 8 minutes, is it's not like Georgia changed their defensive scheme and confused
They were pressing a little bit more.
It's still, South Carolina got open shots in it.
Yeah.
I mean, South Carolina got open shots, and that's what I mean. 803-404-6100. All right. Kudos. Jeff O'Hare, we had him on last week. Cox by 90 down there at a couple different establishments. Patrick Davis played outside on Saturday. A lot of speakers. It was all really cool, honoring Steve Tannehill. There was a lot of football players from that particular era that were down there hanging out. I saw our good buddy John Strickland, who was after Tannehill. Jamie Bradford was down there. So many great people. So it came to me.
Okay.
All right. Do you know, you might know this, I kind of expect you to know because you do a great job with research, South Carolina's first SEC victory in football, their first SEC victory in football?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay. Do you know who the quarterback was for the first SEC victory?
Would have been Tannehill.
It was against a ranked Mississippi State team.
Okay.
You get Mississippi State on September 19th.
That's right.
Just make it September 18th is a Friday, obviously. Make it Tannehill weekend.
I like that.
Make it Tannehill weekend, the 18th on a Friday. They can do a golf tournament, Jeff, or Cox by 90. They can do something down in 5 Points. We can honor him. You can do all that stuff. But yeah, that Friday would be the 18th. The 19th, it's already family weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You got family. Most of the family is my age who remembers Tannehill from that. You make that weekend, and that day is all about Steve Tannehill at the football. Again, highlights of that 1992 game against Mississippi State should be shown on the big board. Everything you can, because again, that was number one. Yeah. Just kind of honor that for a second. That was the very first victory ever for South Carolina. That broke that 0-5 record from that year. But I like it. I like the idea of giving out some kind of mullet hats or something to the game for everybody. Go ahead and start planning and plotting. But marketing department down there, sir, somebody put me in touch with the marketing department. September 19th, that weekend. Again, it's already family weekend, but that needs to be Steve Tannehill weekend. You can highlight the 18-yard line if you want.
Sure.
Make a big day of it. In between breaks, constantly have Steve Tannehill highlights, have messages on the big board from former players. I know we're not crazy about him. I got it. Put aside your dislike and your hate, and that's what it is, long enough to maybe let Brad Scott have a message up there.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be a little crazy, but I realize that might be pushing it a tad too far, but you get my point.
Sure. Yeah, we talked about it before Christmas, some kind of in-stadium featured thing that stays there. I mentioned renaming the cockpit after him or something along those lines.
I like that idea.
Something more permanent other than just, okay, we're going to retire your jersey or whatever it may be. So, yeah, can Nike get up some throwbacks from that year as well? Is that something we could come up with? I'm all for throwbacks.
Yeah,
you
get the opportunity. I'm Googling real quick to see if I can just pull a video and what that jersey looked like. I can't remember. It looks like they're wearing the garnet. They won 21-6. It was
Okay.
October 17th.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first SEC win and ended a long losing streak with a breakout performance. Tannehill threw for 183 yards and 2 touchdowns in that particular ball game. It looks like they were wearing garnet jerseys. Nope, that's the Carolina Clemson game. I'll have to go back and see if we have video of that particular game. Brandon Bennett and Rob DeBoer combined for 236 rushing yards. Lawrence Mitchell, I'm reading this off of the internet, so if I'm wrong, blame the internet. Sparked the defense. The Gamecocks gained a season high in that game, 505 yards. See if I can find the uniforms.
Or maybe if nothing else, maybe you put an 18 on the helmet. I don't know,
I
along those
agree with
lines.
you. Do something. But Steve Tannehill weekend, that's what I'm promoting. September 18th, 19th, and 20th. That's what the university needs to do, Tyler.
I like it.
All right, well, speaking of football, we'll get into some transfer portal talk, and I'll get back to some of these text messages. You're listening to the Halftime Show.
It's all right here for our friends over at Tilly's Warehouse. First wine and spirit store in 5 Points in the past 20 years. It's a new year, but they still have got you covered for everything that you need for a fun night, a fun weekend, whatever it may be. Tilly's has got you covered. If you need something like the Garden Black vodka, in which 25% of proceeds go to the Garnet Trust, they've got you covered. Want things in the can like High Noons and Sun Cruisers, Surf Size and Cutwaters? They got all those too for whatever the occasion is. Of course, Tilly's is located right there on Green Street in the old Pavlov's building, right behind the Salty Nut Cafe. Easy to get in and out of and get whatever you need. Mention that you heard this ad on 107.5 The Game and get 10% off any wine selection as well. Keep up with them on Instagram and Facebook. Visit the website tillswarehouse.com for information and discover why Tilly's is your new must-visit spot over in 5 Points.
definitely not thinking about the next game. I'm thinking about cracking open a beer.
All right, well, go celebrate with your family. Congrats. Enjoy that beer, Coach.
Ah, the words of Kirk Signetti. America's villain, America's sweetheart, America's darling. What is Kirk Signetti in America right now?
I'm kind of worried because he actually showed some joy after that win. I'm like, wait a minute, Coach, we're pissed off until we win this whole thing, right? Like, thought that was the MO. He actually smiled and said he was going to celebrate. But job ain't done. Yeah, one more game in Miami next weekend. You hold off the beer until then.
Well, that's what I'm saying. He's doing it so he's winning with such ease. He had time to relax in the second half, but he chose not to. That's not how he looks. So then he gets to the end of the game. He's fully relaxed mode.
Let me ask you this, because, and they did it again on Friday, where they always cut him when his team's up by 30-some-odd points. He's just got that mad look on his face. Do you think he's self-aware of that now? Because, like, in the beginning, it was almost kind of, like, funny. Like, oh, man, look at Kurt Signetti. He's mad that his team's winning by 50 points. Like, do you think he's more aware of, like, all right, camera's probably on me, make sure this scowl is extra severe now, or you think he's just still locked in on everything? Because I think he's still locked in.
I think he is, too. That's his.
There is some self-awareness of knowing that the cameras are waiting for it now, to where, like, all right, maybe I hold this face a little bit longer just to give people their meme for the night.
I think it's 98% genuine, and then I think there's a 2% thing where he's playing into it. But I mean, look, when you're up 35-7 or whatever it was, I mean, they're in complete control, right?
At halftime, yeah.
They were in complete control. And, at halftime. And, but he's just one of those guys. Look, I don't know if maybe I don't see enough people talking about it. Maybe people pay attention to it and they don't bring it up. I'm not real sure how to kind of phrase this, but he's from the Nick Saban tree.
Yes, he is.
He's a Nick Saban disciple.
Mm-hmm.
And with that being said, now what I didn't know was the cool story about his dad being a head coach too.
Right.
But with that being said, there are the mannerisms there and also the way he talks about things that, quite frankly, if you closed your eyes and you used a voice modulator and you just listen to what he said, you'd be like, Nick Saban's back.
And I think it's really funny that you bring that point up, because I was thinking about this over the weekend, because, of course, James Madison got hired to go to Indiana going into last year. I think he's at the right spot because he has the opportunity where all the success is put on him. Because Indiana's never had a winning tradition, losing his program in college football basically until he got there, as opposed to, like, let's just say because he was a Saban assistant, they hired him instead of DeBoer. A couple years ago, right? Like he takes over after Nick Saban. Then we'd be talking about, well, this guy's just copying Saban. For one, the success is because Saban set everything up for him, and he's trying to be Nick Saban 2.0. And I don't think we'd be looking at him in the same way if he's doing the same thing at Alabama, because we'd say, oh, he's just trying to be Nick Saban 2.0. But with the fact that he's at Indiana and taking a team that nobody's ever cared about in football to the highest of heights in college football, he gets to kind of exist on his own a little bit. I had that thought over the weekend of, like, man, how different would we look at him if he was at Alabama as opposed to Indiana?
Yeah, and look, I'll say this for Shane Beamer or for any other coach. It's the same thing if somebody did it at South Carolina. It's how we were viewing. It's how we started to view Clark Lee last year and into this year, and then, quite frankly, Kirk Signetti zoomed past him.
Yeah. If
like we knew, it was kind of like last year they were a cute story, but
sure.
The narrative last year that your schedule is so bad,
right,
and you avoided all the big names. And then they get blown out by Notre Dame in the playoff. You just went, it was y'all's schedule. It's not Kirk Signetti. It's not who you were. It's not Kurt Rourke or anything. And then this year to come back and bounce back and do it all over again and be undefeated here. And now not just winning, but demolishing folks. You go, oh, this guy's a different story.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up with Clark Lee as well, because let's say Indiana went 8-4 this year instead. Tougher schedule, kind of fell back down to earth a little bit. We'd be talking about Vanderbilt as, like, the best story in college football, considering what they did last year and obviously carrying that over into this year, winning 10 games and all that kind of stuff. But, again, the Indiana thing's just impossible to ignore because, I don't know about you, I'm picking them for the national championship next week. Miami's got a good defense, but I still don't think that's going to be enough for them to beat Indiana. I think they're going to go 16-0 and win the whole thing.
So let's backtrack on this, because I found this funny. I found this semi-amusing. and we didn't, obviously, you were out last week, so we didn't really get to talk about Thursday night. And one of the greatest, it's early. How many games have we played now? 4 last year, and then 4, 8, 10, 11. And so what we played just under 20 college football playoff games. Is that about right?
In the history of the playoff?
Of the 12-team college football playoff.
The way we're doing it. Thursday was the 50th playoff game.
Okay, well, if you want to back it out, I mean, Georgia, Oklahoma out in the Rose Bowl was something to behold. There's been other good ones, Georgia, Ohio State. I mean,
Ole Miss, Miami would be top 5. I
was going to say in this edition of the 12-team college football playoff and in what we're getting now, that would be the game to win. But it felt like coming out of that game that we all wanted to crown Miami as the national champion. It felt like, because it was such a great game, and the defense is so good for them, and the defensive ends, and Carson Beck finally did something great at the end of the game, and it just felt, and Miami's going back home to play for a national championship. Like, it was kind of like, all right, Miami's about to win another national championship.
Sure.
I think I saw some kind of little graphic that showed all their championships from the 80s and the 90s, and it was kind of like, all right, here they come again, and they're going to win. And it feels like the narrative by midnight Friday night had flipped so dramatically that Michael Irvin whipping a trash can was like, all right, Mike, you about to get yours, Chief.
Yeah.
Here comes. Yeah, you'll see what you're doing post Indiana, Miami.
And we do kind of get caught up in the moment in sports a lot. It happens. It's a natural kind of thing. And when you have the Thursday night game standing on its own and watching, because again, I picked Ole Miss to win. I thought Ole Miss was going to win. It looked like when Trinidad Chandler threw that touchdown pass with a couple minutes to go, they were going to. And then Miami goes down the field. Carson Beck scrambles for the touchdown, and the rest is history. And I think we kind of got caught up in the moment of like, man, this is a team that we didn't even know was going to get into the playoff up until the final second when the committee put them in, going on this run, playing for the national championship in their home venue, to just to add more to it. And then, I don't know if that was the motivating factor for Indiana to like, hey, let's remind people, who the blank we are, but they certainly did that because, through the rest of the weekend, it's like, oh, yeah, Indiana's going to beat Miami.
It beat them bad, too. Like, the narrative has changed.
That's a 7.5-point spread right now.
Well, for those of you wondering that because of the way they won, so Brian Edwards was on with us on Friday, and he said Indiana, Vegas had already, I can't remember which book he mentioned, had already instilled Indiana, if they were to beat Oregon that night as a 5.5-point favorite. They beat Oregon so bad the line moved 2 points.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to watch that dynamic because, at least for me, and I can only speak for me, as Thursday night played out and then you go into Friday afternoon and everybody's kind of – and look, I've said it. College football is great when Miami's back because they're a villain. I mean, they are a legit bad dude villain.
Now, they're not the bad boys
Not
that
yet.
they were.
Give them time.
They might end up being back to that. But
Carson Beck is releasing text messages supposedly of him and the Cavender girl. And
yeah. Well, listen, I've seen too much of Carson Beck's private messages over the years, unfortunately. But you're right. The brand of Miami is something, and let's think about it from the perspective of you watching, games with your son, right? Where your son has not known Miami to be a power in college football, but as you're watching them go on this run, go play for a national championship, you're telling them about the team from the early 2000s. You're telling them about the U back in the 80s and 90s, and getting that history of what they were as they're kind of slowly making their way back to that. Will they ever get back to that point? I don't know. Probably not.
I don't think so. No.
That brand has stuck with them for so long, and when you kind of see them back in this national championship picture, you think back to those times.
803-404-6100. Yeah, it was kind of interesting to see that. What I felt like was that narrative flip, where I was doing the show here on Friday, everybody's like pro Miami.
Yeah,
you might dislike them, but it was like a begrudging. Yeah, Miami's back, and it didn't take long either. What, 8:30ish? Game started at 7:30 Friday night. Yeah. By 8:30, it was like, Indiana's going to mop the floor with them.
Honestly, I mean, the pick six on the first play kind of told me, and I know Oregon went down the field and scored a touchdown to tie it, but that kind of told me, like, yeah, it's probably going to be one of those kind of nights.
Yeah, I'm with you. So Indiana, Miami, I love it. I'm all for it. I'm actually excited about this championship game. I think it's going to be a blowout. I hope it's not. like I said, I love the fact, and I said this last week, Miami, go be who you are. Let's get all of Miami this week. Let's get all the gold chains. Let's get all the big starter jackets. Let's get all the cockiness, the arrogance. Let's get Michael Irvin and Ray Lewis and Warren Sapp just saying wild. Michael Irvin just doing all the stuff he does. Let's get it all because that is Miami, and that's what's fun to dislike about Miami.
Sure.
And bring it all. Give it all to me. Get what's the other quarterback? Was it not Testaverde? Steve Berlin, is that right?
I think
it was. They've got a quarterback who was very arrogant
from back in the day.
Back in the day,
Testaverde was on that 2001 team. I want to say.
No. That's Ken.
That was like Dorsey.
Ken Dorsey. No,
Testaverde was older than that.
Testaverde's older than that.
Sorry.
But yeah, I can't remember which one it is that's in the U. Might have been Testaverde. I can't remember, but it's in the original U, and I think he was the quarterback against Notre Dame. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of, obviously a lot from it, but give it to me all.
Yeah.
Give it to me all, and then give me all the Kirk Cignetti because they're going to be a villain. They're going to be Indiana is sustainable, and Indiana is going to be around, and people are going to get tired of Kirk Cignetti because of the way that attitude and what he does will rub people wrong once it's done being the neat, cute story.
That's the nature of sports fandom is we love an underdog until they start winning too much. I mean, look, go back to the early 2000s when the Patriots started winning Super Bowls. It started off as this great story of a sixth-round quarterback that suddenly takes over the reins, becomes the best player in the NFL. But when they started winning too much, people got sick of them. People got sick of the way that Bill Belichick carried himself. And by the late 2000s, they were the most hated team in the NFL because they were so good. Indiana's still very early on in the process. I believe they're going to be able to sustain this as well to where by 2027, 2028, sick of Indiana, sick of Kirk Cignetti, sick of his arrogance and all that kind of stuff.
Throw Mark Cuban in there.
It's all coming. So, yeah, they're still in the infancy of a potential dynasty right now where everybody loves the story. It's going to get old fast.
803-404-6100 will transition to what would make South Carolina that way. Well, it's got to be the transfer portal, one of the ways. We'll talk about the haul that South Carolina has made. Try and keep an eye out here. You never know when they're going to get another.
Well, they could have had 4 commitments in the past 10 minutes.
You're exactly right. 803-404-6100 is how you can weigh in. You're listening to the Halftime Show. Bill Gunner for Old Timey Meat Market. It was another, I was just mentioning all the great football, and that was highlighted by great meals from Old Timey Meat Market. Now, listen, it is January. It's not quite the cooking out weather that we get during the great spring, summer, and fall, but that doesn't mean you still can't get a phenomenal dinner, maybe even a lunch from Old Timey Meat Market with their homemade soups, with some of the great things that they have. You don't always have to be just out on the grill cooking out. You can cook indoors. Find out for yourself. Go visit one of their 3 phenomenal locations. You've got South Congaree, St. Andrews Road in Irmo, or, of course, the Lexington store, and visit and see what they're all about. Why they stand out is because of how they treat you, the customer, wanting to get to know your name, your favorite cuts of meat, and understand what you and your family like so that when you walk in the door, they've got it ready for you. Stop by one of Old Timey Meat Market's 3 locations today and tell them Bill Gunner sent you. Rolling along on a Monday afternoon where the way South Carolina has operated the transfer portal, Tyler, there's been no down minutes.
There really hasn't. I don't know what the record for signing guys over a weekend is, but 10 over the course of basically 2.5 days, it's got to be up there because by the time we left on Friday to coming in this morning, 10 new names out of the portal for South Carolina.
So let's address some of these here and go through it. Now, I don't know, Tyler. This is kind of a situation where, cool, this is all great, but I truthfully don't know what precisely we're looking at here. And I'll give you a couple of the examples here. So Kelby Collins, now one of the big ones, comes from Alabama, 6'4", 275. Not a tweener in that sense, but he can play interior or go on the edge.
Yep.
It's good, but I mean, do you look at him? How are we going to judge him? Essentially, in his 1 year, if you will.
I think you look at him, and
in his first year, I should say.
Well, I think you look at him similarly to a guy like Monkel Goodwine, and I get it. Goodwine had 2 years here as opposed to maybe just one, but you hope, because again, he's coming from Alabama, was at Florida before that, a fairly highly recruited guy that you're hoping, okay, well, he just wasn't on the field because there's so much talent around him. He just didn't get his opportunity. When he got out there, did have some production for the time that he was able to be out there on the field, and you hope that he finds his fit in the rotation of the defensive line. Again, you've got guys, and we talked about it last month of getting Gabriel Brownlow-Dinley back, which you did. Troy Pikes is coming back, so you've already got guys on the defensive line, so you hope that he can be, if he's going to play the interior, is going to be somebody that can rotate in with those guys and give you a solid rotation of 4 to 5 guys and play his role well. It doesn't have to go out there and be a superstar, just be a solid contributor, I think is kind of where your hope for him and these other guys in the D-line room is.
Yeah, I mean, again, what you just said, he went to Florida in 2023, transferred less than a year later, over a year later to Alabama, and has since left Alabama. So I believe he's got 2 years of eligibility, if I'm correct on this. Is this what you've read?
I believe.
The eligibility game is a wild scenario to try and figure out right now.
We've now gotten past the COVID years.
I think we have.
I don't think we have to account for that anymore. But, yes, I believe he should have 2 years of eligibility left, if I'm thinking correctly.
That's what I had down as well. But he's a big one. Then you go to the offensive line and trying to figure these guys out. Look, to me, they're all competition pieces. I know, Tyler, that everybody's going to look instantly at Jacarius Peak and say, okay, you're the starter. You are the left hand. And that probably is the way it should be. Now, South Carolina's about completely out of tackles at this point. You've now lost Casey Henry. You've now lost Babalade. You've now lost Josiah Thompson. And now you've lost Jatavius Shivers, who announced yesterday he's going in the portal. So we're going to be under the impression Jacarius Peak is a starter, but he should have to come in and earn it.
Probably.
That's what you need, and that's what I expect.
And one good thing, because I think we've got 6 total offensive linemen committed out of the portal right now, the majority of these guys can play inside and outside, right? Like you have guys that have played guard and played tackle, or played tackle and played guard, so we'll see kind of where they fit. Now, you're right. When you kind of look at the scholarship breakdown, you only have 3 true tackles on this team right now, but a lot of guys in the interior, they can go to play the outside if they need to. And again, when you just talk about pure numbers of 6 guys that you brought in, well, that tells me not all these guys are going to start because there's only 5 starting positions. You feel like Shed Surratt's got an opportunity to be one of your starters, so that leaves 4 spots potentially for these guys coming in out of the transfer portal, and that's something else. There's 15 total offensive linemen in that room as of right now with an opportunity to add more. Not all these guys are going to play, and that's okay, especially on the offensive line. You want 1 unit of 5 guys playing each and every week, not having to rotate, not having to deal with injuries. So some of these guys are probably going to be depth pieces, which is okay. And Beamer's talked about that because we've dealt with injuries on the offensive line in the past where your numbers were so thin you got down to not even having a scout team during practice. So some of these guys are purely going to be, depth pieces, scout team guys, whatever it may be, and that's fine. You just hope that within this new offensive system and what Coach Clements wants out of an offensive line, you craft a good one that can hold up an SEC play because you haven't had that the past couple of years.
Well, the big thing that you mentioned, the game that what you mentioned is it creates competition. All these guys coming in the returners as well. Marquis Anderson, throw Shed Surratt in there, Ryan Brubaker, Nolan Hay. There's the other offensive lineman, the 4-star tackle, whose name I can't, Demola.
Judahan.
Excellent. That's why you're here. Good job. But what it is they all have blank slates.
Yes.
They look and they go, well, we got a new coach. Well, we got a new system. They haven't seen me. Theoretically, this should create incredible competition where nobody's missing a winter workout. Nobody's late to the workouts. Everybody's putting in max effort because they realize, hey, an opportunity to come in and start is available here.
And with the new coach, and again, your only holdovers as far as starters from last year are Seth Surratt and Nolan Hay, but nobody has an advantage, right? I don't think Randy Clements is looking at Shed's right and saying, hey, you started last year. You got a leg up at guard or tackle, wherever you're going to play. It's a blank slate for everybody. And that's going to be so vitally important in spring practice coming up here in a couple of months is figuring things out. Now, you still got the summer, still got camp and all that kind of stuff, but those practices in the spring where you can finally start hitting and figuring things out, where you start kind of maneuvering pieces and seeing what you got and seeing what your offensive line is going to be. But everybody that's coming in here, even a guy like Cherry's Peak, not promised anything. He's going to have to compete your spot.
I assume so. You assume no promises.
You assume that he's probably got the lead when it comes to being left tackle, but he's still got to go out there and earn it because outside of watching tape, Randy Clements doesn't know this guy. He's still got to see him up close and personal, see what he's going to do in practice to determine if he's going to be the guy that's going to start at that spot for you.
The other part to all this I find mildly amusing is with some of this stuff we don't know right now. I'm big on taking transfer prospects that have more eligibility.
Right.
For example, probably the one that I'm most excited about for South Carolina at this point in time is former four-star defensive lineman Jordan Thomas, 6'5", 315. He just needs coaching, but he's got lots of eligibility to do that. All right, Travian Roberts, so what can you do with him? I really, really like that pickup because, again, of the eligibility. The running back position to me is wild. We were like, all right, you got to go in the portal and you got to get guys. On the cuff, if I told you South Carolina just took running backs from Penn State and Ohio State, I think you'd be like, yeah.
Sounds great.
Former four-star guys. The problem is we know nothing about either Coleman or Dixon.
Well, and the bare minimum of the running back room was at least getting depth and bodies, right? Because you went into this offseason with three scholarship running backs, which is not acceptable at any place in college football, let alone an SEC school. So knew at bare minimum you needed to get more bodies in the room, which is what these two guys obviously satisfy. Again, more highly touted guys coming out of high school, so that's good. I think Jabri Coleman coming from Penn State, having worked with Stan Drayton, I don't know if that gives him a leg up necessarily, but he's already been in the development process, and, Drayton knows what he has out of him if he does end up factoring in. Ideally, you'd still like to be able to go out there and land like a major RB1, like a Justice Haynes or somebody else, somebody that's just out there in the portal that would be a feature back if he came to Carolina, like Rocket Sanders was a couple years ago. You don't know if you're going to get that necessarily. I still think you need to go out there and get at least 1 to 2 more just to fill out the room a little bit. But you have experience coming back with guys like Fuller and Howell. Isaiah Gustav's going to come back as well, even though didn't play a whole lot last year. So it's not a completely green room. It's just not a room where you look at that and say, okay, that's the guy, and everybody else falls in line behind him.
Well, the other part about this, again, you've kind of made up for your lack of high school recruiting because then Jabri Coleman comes in, I believe, with 4 years of eligibility.
Yeah, because he redshirted. He didn't play at all this year.
So my point is,
he's a de facto high school recruit.
You essentially now you've kind of made up some ground. Sam Dixon-Howe, I believe, has 3 years of eligibility. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, he played a little bit last year, so I don't think he got to redshirt. But yeah, he's portal, you never know. If they were to stay around, they're going to be here for a while.
Right. 803-404-6100. Let's go to the phone lines. Tim wants to weigh in this afternoon. Tim, how you doing? What's on your mind?
I'm doing fine. I got a couple things. The last thing, please just let me finish that one. But I think South Carolina missed an opportunity next year for football. And that's the dropping of the Miami game. I kind of think that came from the South Carolina side more than the Miami side. But if South Carolina wants to be a big-time program, that's a no-lose situation for Miami. For South Carolina. Worst case scenario, you're opening your season with a team that played for the national championship. Best case scenario, the defending national championship is coming to William Brice and playing.
Yeah, look. They didn't miss an opportunity. Now, as fans, we did. We got cheated. And I appreciate the phone call, Tim. You were cutting in and out there a little bit on us.
I'd much rather see Miami than Kent State.
Yeah, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Don't. I was excited about that Miami game. Shoot, I was excited about going to Miami the following year. It was going to be the weekend of my daughter's birthday, and she was going to be 18. So I'd already made big plans for that. So, but in terms of South Carolina, look, who has Indiana played in the non-conference in the last 2 years?
Well, and look, everybody's doing this. Everybody is canceling their non-mandatory out-of-conference series, and not just Carolina. Like, you're not just the only one doing that. Again, as fans, we lose out because you're replacing a team playing for a national championship with one of the lower-end teams in all of college football, and it's probably not going to be that fun of a game to watch. Now, yeah, theoretically, if you win that game, that certainly helps you out with conversation of the playoff and all that kind of stuff next year. But this is just kind of where college football is going, unfortunately.
803-404-6100. Yeah, we as fans, to Tim's point, we get kind of worked over on that. Shane Beamer will pick up an extra victory. The Gamecocks should, I guess.
Yes.
Don't count your chickens before they hatch.
No guarantees.
But Shane Beamer should pick up an extra victory. The schedule will look a little bit nicer and a little bit plumper next year come the end of November because you played Kent State and Towson. But as Tyler pointed out, that's what everybody's doing. South Carolina's not the only one who's doing that. Now, there are a lot of schools who are still holding on to some of those games. I believe Michigan, Oklahoma is still on. Texas, Ohio State is still on. There are some other games.
But those teams also don't have built-in non-conference opponents, so they kind of have to.
Clemson, LSU is still on. So we'll see. 803-404-6100. We'll come back through the other side, look at some of the players South Carolina has lost, and let you know where they're going. 2 of them maybe to Miami, to the potential national champions. We'll tell you about that. It is the Halftime Show. 1:35 on a Monday. Tyler Head, Bill Gunner, Captain David Dare trying to not get swept into the transfer portal. We managed to keep Tyler out last week. He's now with us completely. Voice sounds good?
It does sound good.
Got to turn your mic on to hear you.
Yeah, that probably would help. What's funny is I turned on the wrong mic when the show started because I hadn't been on this side in a while. Last week was not fun. Shout out to the doctor that gave me some meds that I've been on for the past couple of days. It was the cough more than anything else that was the problem because, every time I would talk for an extended period of time, I'd have a coughing fit, and coughing irritates your throat, which makes your voice harder to recover. So once I finally stopped coughing, the voice actually came back pretty quickly, in addition to all the remedies and stuff that I did. Unfortunately, it does. Chris was sick today. It seems like everybody's kind of getting something like this. I think my wife is slowly getting sick now, thanks to me. And it probably doesn't help.
My chair back
It doesn't.
this way.
Listen, it doesn't help that we go from 75 to 45 to 50 to 69 day in and day out as far as weather. Saturday was beautiful, a little bit windy, but beautiful.
Yeah.
And today it's 50 degrees.
Yeah.
That's why we're getting sick.
And it's going to be a little bit colder as the week goes on. Prepare yourself accordingly for that.
Are we setting up for February snow? This feels like February snow,
I
right?
always label it March.
March snow? Okay.
March, we get one of those really odd. Now, it's pretty much guaranteed. It's all but guaranteed that about a month from now, we'll get some little nice, almost late springish weather that will quickly be interrupted by opening baseball day, freezing cold temperatures.
Yeah, that's classic. 'Cause baseball starts on February 13th this year on that Friday. So, yeah, the 11th and 12th will probably be mid to high 60s, maybe into the 70s. And Friday night, it's going to be 45 and raining.
Yeah, Friday afternoon, that first opening game. But no, I'll say we get a odd March snow this year that comes out of nowhere, kind of a late winter rush. And then we head into the summer. But it'll be, and to follow up, it'll be interesting if we get a spring game this year to see all these new transfers.
I did listen to you a lot last week, and you threw out your first take of 2026 saying we're not going to have a spring game, which I think you're on the right path there, especially with renovations going to the stadium. Now that we don't have a spring portal window, there's not as much decentivizing of spring games, so it's going to be interesting to see what Carolina decides to do.
I'll be interested. Again, I think Shane Beam would love to have one. I think they may try to have one. I haven't been over there. My father was over there last week, and he was kind of giving me an update on what it looks like over there, and I don't know if construction will allow. I don't know if you want people in there,
especially
around the stadium in particular.
That's the thing, because a lot of the work right now is being done on the outside, right? If you were on the inside, you could close off one half of the stadium like they did for last year's spring games. All right, well, we're not going to touch what's going on over here. But when you have stuff on the outside, that's where you get a little bit more tricky of situation. So I hope they have a spring game, and I hope they televise it because they didn't do that last year. But I'm with you. I wouldn't be shocked if they decided not to do that this year.
Yeah, and certainly getting the spring game will give us an opportunity to see a lot of these new players, one of which is Nitro Tuggle.
Great name.
That comes from Purdue, comes originally from Georgia. Yep. I believe I saw it where you said, I believe it was you.
It was me.
Who was a big part of your wide receiving core of college football 26 to a national championship for the Bulldogs.
Deep crossing routes to Nitro Tuggle have won me many a third downs in college football 25. So high-level contributor, I'm already a fan.
So he will be expected to come in and replace Vandravius Jacobs.
Yes.
Who we now know is going to Miami. So to give you the rundown of what we know, Tyler and I were just talking about this off air. Because I've said it multiple times, Trevon Ball to A&M.
Yep.
So a college football playoff participant. Tree Babalade follows his coach, Lonnie Teasley, to Nebraska.
Makes sense.
Nick Sharp goes to Michigan State. So he's just checking out different parts of the country now.
Yep.
Casey Henry is going to Louisville.
Yep.
Louisville. We now know Vandravius Jacobs, one of the bigger names, where he's going, and that's going to be Miami. A lot of reports yesterday coming out that Josiah Thompson likely ending up at Miami. That appears the leader for him. That would be kind of interesting. By the way, Boaz Stanley going to Purdue. So you're not seeing.
We traded.
Yeah, we got a 2-for-1 deal on that one. But you're not seeing those guys, Tyler, specifically the offensive line, go down. And a matter of fact, some you could make the case, hey, they're upgrading.
Yeah, I thought, especially for somebody like Josiah Thompson that struggled as much as he did this year, I thought maybe he dips down to a G5, kind of gets his feet back under him, and then emerges at a P4 again next year, the year after, or what it may be. But, you know, if Miami's willing to pay him what he's asking for, then, hey, go get your bag, man. We'll see if you develop and get back to more in line of what you were in your freshman season. Going back to the Nitro Tuggle thing, because I think you would look at it and say Vendrevious Jacobs is the most significant portal loss that they've had in terms of, like, on the field contribution, because you would have looked at him as like the number 2 behind Nick Harbor going into next year. But I think you look at Tuggle and say, all right, you either basically got the same thing or maybe something a little bit better with what you got out of the portal in Nitro Tuggle, to where I don't think the loss of Vendrevious Jacobs is really felt anymore.
Yeah, the only thing is I like continuity, but you are right. Tuggle will be expected to be that guy. Also along the lines, look, it's time for Jaden Sellers to step up. You've got this young wide receiver core. Donovan Murph was, trying to find his way this year. He'll be expected to step up. I don't think Vendrevious Jacobs is a huge loss, but it is a loss.
It is. But again, you got more production coming out of the portal. We'll obviously see what Jaden Gibson ends up being, once he's here and everything. You obviously got the injury concerns with him, but I'm excited to see Nitro Tuggle play.
Sorry, I'm choking on you over here. So get caught up in all the transfer portals and the leaving and everything. Both of us are struggling as we get through this program. So you got those. So my question to y'all would be, how do you feel? How do you assess what South Carolina is losing in the transfer portal against what they're getting back? Do you say, well, because I think it's a little bit too easy. I think it's a little bit too easy to just say, well, those guys stunk. All right, we're upgrading. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, if you will. I think, it's going to be a time will tell situation, because as you've heard me say, and I'm not going to waste a lot of your time on it, I blame more of the offensive line problems on coaching than I do on the individuals that were being coached. And Josiah Thompson was fine. He was a freshman All-American. He was fine as a freshman. And then last year, again, after essentially a year of coaching, if you will, regressed to struggling. And that's being look, I'm not trying to tell you Josiah Thompson was adequate last year. He was beyond bad in 2025. So with that being said, I get why some people will go, well, yes, get the bums out of here. Get these duds out of here. Let's bring in, it can't be any worse. Well, we'll see. And I think we're going to get a great look at that, given that a lot of these linemen have gone to equal or even better, if you will, programs, and see how they do. I mean, can you imagine, number one, if Boaz, no offense to Boaz Stanley, but if he goes up there and plays a significant role for Purdue, then I think we all look at Lonnie Teasley like, my goodness, how in the world did you ever qualify to be an offensive line coach? And that's exactly what you were produced right there. But, Josiah Thompson at Miami, if he goes in and he's the starting left tackle, Trevon Ball goes in and is a big part of the A&M offense. Tree Babalade, we'll have no clue about because he's actually going to play for Lonnie Teasley. But you get the point in what these young men were doing, and why I think the coaching was more the problem than the actual players themselves. So we'll see. But now that you see what South Carolina's brought in, and to give you the rundown on what the Gamecocks landed, not what they landed, but on the offensive line and where things stand at this point, South Carolina probably is going for about 7, maybe probably 7 now, transfer offensive linemen to fit with what they've had. So it starts, they did land Seth Smith over the weekend, 6'6", 285 pounds, out of Northern Arizona. Dane Arnett comes in, 6'5". I'm reading the 24/7 Sports listing, so whatever they have as height and weight is what I'm going for there. But Dane Arnett comes in from Ferris State. You're familiar with that because of Trinidad Chambliss at this point, or if you're a Newberry fan, unfortunately, you're familiar with him. Emmanuel Puka comes in from East Carolina, 6'5", 325. Jacarius Peak, 6'4", 285. Obviously, NC State is where he's coming from. Hank Purvis, big boy, 6'5", 360, comes in from Purdue. Carter Miller comes in, 6'2", 300 pounds from Central Florida. So that's who you have right there on the offensive line. Right now, that's 3 guys, 4 guys, 5, 6 offensive linemen. Don't be surprised to see South Carolina take definitely 1 more and maybe even go for 2 with the Jatavius Shivers news, to have roughly 15 guys and a few holdovers that you're able to get a 3 deep and have both competition and depth as well. 803-404-6100. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 2. You're listening to the Halftime Show. Wrapping up hour number 2. Oh, portal talk. A couple of y'all weighing in. Miami guy on our text line says Thompson will get better development in Miami. Cristobal and his right-hand man, Mirabel, make the O-line the face of the program. And I do. I mean, look,
Yeah.
I would say, I guess, in this country, if you're going to pick a school to go to for your offensive line development, Miami's top.
Yeah, it's probably up there when you have an former offensive lineman head coach. And you bring up a good point with all these guys that departed the offensive line. We'll see where Shivers goes, obviously, but are you intrigued to see how they play at these other places, at Texas Tech, at Nebraska, at Louisville, to see man, maybe it was just line. Now, Ball is gonna, or what Tree is it?
He's going to be in Nebraska.
He's going to be in Nebraska line Teasley, so maybe that's one you look at a little bit different. These other guys, maybe you do say, okay, maybe it was just Lion Teasley holding these guys back, and they're going and getting the development elsewhere. Because again, we saw what Thompson was capable of as a freshman. It wasn't the perfect season, as you would expect a freshman at left tackle to play, obviously, but he had his good moments, and he just regressed this year. So, yeah, and look, we're not dogging the kid. I wish him the best of luck, and we'll see what happens. But I think we're all going to kind of keep an eye on him, look at those Pro Football Focus numbers week in and week out to see, okay, yeah, he went to Miami and got a whole lot better.
You can't convince me that they recruited 5 or 6 busts. And if it is, then you really can't convince me, oh, well, the guys that stayed aren't bust. No, you can't have it. But we didn't keep the good ones, and only the bad ones left.
This is kind of like those breakups, right? Where both sides end up better off in the long run. Each person finds their person after that, and whatever. You're both happy, and that possibility can exist here, where you can have a new offensive line coach that brings in all these guys from the portal, and it works out tremendously, and you have one of the better offensive lines in college football, or at least in the SEC, and then all these other guys go everywhere else and get better. That's great. We're not rooting against them to do that. I just think we're intrigued to see how that plays out.
Is that what we're doing? Because aren't in breakups, don't you root against the other person, or do you root for the person?
I guess it depends.
Okay.
It depends on your own experience.
Are we rooting for them? I'm rooting for them.
Yeah,
I'm rooting for them.
It's one of those things where I'm not going to be dialed in to a Louisville game saying, all right, yeah, let's go Case and Henry, get that pancake block or whatever.
And then, by the way, do we take credit for, if it wasn't for us,
maybe
they wouldn't be where they were today.
But I think you can watch them say,
I made them a better partner.
Yeah, they were better because of me.
803.
Yeah, I think you can look at those games and say, you know what, good for him.
That's the way I lead my life. I improve everybody. 803-404-6100. Phone lines we go. Ron wants to weigh in on the transfer portal. Ron, how you doing this afternoon? What's on your mind?
Good, guys. Thanks for taking my call. While I understand what you're saying about the offensive line, can you imagine if Shane had not made any changes and we went into next year with the same offensive line? I mean, the fan base would go crazy. And as far as the players, how many times do you have to tell a center not to move the ball before you snap it? I mean, that's not even coaching. That's basic football if you're at that position. So you're right. It will be interesting to see what these guys do. But I really do think these guys weren't very good. Josiah Thompson, I think, is a loss because I think he could have been good, and I would like to have seen him with this new offensive line coach. But I do think we've upgraded.
Yeah,
and I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Out of all these guys who have come in, is anybody not signed yet?
I don't know if they've actually signed Jaden Gibson yet.
I got it.
Because from Gamecock Central, they have the list, and they put check marks next. Let me check the latest thing to see.
I got to be honest, Ron. I don't know what signing means anymore.
So, okay. So
I don't know if that means technically, by the way, just for the record, he reversed course, mind you.
Yeah.
He reversed course and will stay at Washington. Damon Williams signed with Washington and then was going to go to the transfer portal. So I don't think signing means anything.
So as of right now, this is per Gamecock Central.
But they stopped that.
Yeah.
They stopped that. He can't go. He had to stay at Washington.
No, that was his decision. Made that.
I think he was told. I think he was told by attorneys, listen, kid, you don't have a leg to stand on. You signed a binding contract.
Maybe. By the way,
it would have gone to court.
By the way, just for the record, LSU today did land Sam Levitt.
Yes, they did.
So they doubled back to get their quarterback on Levitt.
Real quick, to answer your question, this is per Gamecock Central. The guy's not signed as of yet. Jaden Gibson, Sam Williams-Dixon, Seth Smith, Kelby Collins, Drew Collins, and Jabri Wallace-Coleman. Now, again, most of those guys are guys that just came in over the weekend, but up to right now, Gibson is still not signed with Carolina yet. Don't know the details on that, but that is worth noting.
All right, yeah, and again, Ron, to your point on the contract, I don't know. I don't know if South Carolina, look, what Washington's contract was and what South Carolina's got. I mean, we've seen multiple kids I mean, I don't know who signed it, who didn't, but over the weekend, because I saw Alabama fans losing their mind, Hollywood Smothers, the North Carolina State running back, had committed, maybe signed with Alabama, but is now going to Texas.
Yep.
Again, part of that new $40 million roster.
I guess did they tweet out a graphic? Because I feel like if they tweet out a graphic, that means they're signed. That typically seems to be the case.
There was a lot happening over the weekend.
It's so hard to keep up with this. Like, I think we're going to spend the majority of spring looking at rosters and be like, oh, that's where that guy
That's where
went.
he ended up. Oh, I didn't even know he was in the portal to end up at that place.
I skim websites every single day, and it's like, this guy signed here, this guy signed here, and it's just makes your eyes go sideways.
Yeah, I'm with you. For those wondering, just out of curiosity, 24/7 Sports has their portal rankings, and I don't know what exactly to make of these, Tyler. The number one portal class currently is LSU, followed by Texas. Penn State's at 3, Oklahoma State's at 4, and Mississippi is at 5. If you're wondering, South Carolina has gotten up to 16, according to 24/7 Sports. Clemson, who is portaling, Clemson has found the portal. They found the door in their building. Clemson right now not in the top 50.
Okay.
So they're still working on that. We'll come back. Some wild card weekend. What did we think? And Jamie Bradford, hour 3 on the way.
Tyrod here for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. It's a new year, but the same great service from our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialists. And I remind you all the time, but I'm happy to remind you again, you always need to be on the lookout for things around your home that are a little bit off. Things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you notice any of these problems with your home, you could have serious foundation issues, and that's where our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com. They'll send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live worry-free going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com. Let our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist help you out with your foundation problems.
Clock. Williams. And it's caught for the touchdown by DJ Moore. Forget about the clock. Just take the lead when you can.
That was the one and only Al Michaels, who knew what game he was commentating and knew what was going on, unlike maybe some question Tony Romo yesterday.
Yeah, Romo's fallen off quite a bit. By the way, and since we're talking about, give credit to Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady's got a lot better in his second year.
I don't know if I said that on Twitter with you, but Tom Brady is becoming fun to listen to.
Like year one was a little shaky, but he's hitting his stride. Him and Burkhardt, that's a good combo. I still like Greg Olsen better overall, but
okay.
Brady's growing on me a lot.
I don't know if my opinion of Greg Olsen, I can only go so far with this story because at some point it becomes the fact that we're on a actual radio program and not a podcast. But I stumbled across on Instagram the 7th Floor rap crew.
You didn't know about the 7th Floor crew?
I remembered, but you got to remember that's a while back. Like, it is a while back. And I don't know what I'm allowed to necessarily say. I'm just going to cut short of the nickname for Greg Olsen. And I don't know if either I'd forgotten it or had not heard it. I'm not sure. But about a week ago, listening to Greg Olsen's rap portion of that, I was like, man, to be in college again. To be at the U playing football and tight end and be in college again.
We're all different people than we were in college.
Yes.
And Greg Olsen's a much different person than he was in college.
Much different. So I couldn't help but giggle a little bit when I heard that. But you're right, Greg Olsen doing a good job. So what was the most surprising thing to you? If I was to rank them in order, I'm not going to lie. The Panthers sticking with the Rams was up there. To be in the fourth quarter and me thinking, like, there was an element because I kind of doubled down on the Panthers last week, like, oh, they're going to get blown out. That's going to be ugly.
Sure.
Like, there was an element of, like, I don't know if I want to go do the radio show because I'm going to be really wrong about the Panthers on Monday.
By the way, that line closed at 14.5. So if you got in on that, good for you with the Panthers being able to cover. And, yeah, when they blocked the punt with about 4 minutes to go and scored the touchdown, especially considering the fact that Stafford, after he injured his thumb, he wasn't himself. Right, he was struggling to complete passes, overthrowing guys. Nakua had some bad drops. The Rams weren't playing their best football. It really seemed like there was an opportunity. Of course, they go down the field. Coach Parkins scores the touchdown, and the rest is history there. But yeah, I think, and look, I don't know what the Dave Canales, Bryce Young era is going to end up being when it's all said and done, but they took steps forward this year. Right? I think Bryce Young benefited a lot from being benched. He's come back a better quarterback, was making some big plays on Saturday. Canela's still a very young coach. I think we look at this as a big step for them to build off of going into next year. And again, we'll see what the NFC South's going to be like. We'll see what they do in the draft and all that kind of stuff. But that's kind of one of those moments where a young team with a young quarterback and a first-time head coach, they have to lose a heartbreaker in the playoffs to kind of learn from that and be better for the future going forward. And I think that was a very pivotal game for them. Fun game to watch. Obviously went down to the wire as pretty much all these games were, with the exception of the one on Sunday Night Football between the Patriots and the Chargers. But I think that's something that the Panthers can build off of going forward.
I'm with you. That was a great one. Then you go to the night game. And we'll see what happens now with the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur has been offered, I believe it was 2 coaching opportunities. One I know it's with Vegas. You know, what do the Packers do? I know the Packers were banged up. I know they're injured. But you simply can't lose that. I mean, the Bears were bad in the first half. And I'm not a Bears fan, but I think in my old age I'm becoming a softie. And I can relate to fan bases who have had to suffer through a lot. The Bears, to an extent, have had to suffer. I mean,
oh sure,
they've still had some good times.
I mean, really, since that last Super Bowl appearance, they haven't done much.
But you get Caleb Williams, who is growing on me as a quite like just.
He's a different kind of cat.
He is, but he's growing on me. Ben Johnson's a different kind of cat. He's growing on me. The Bears as a whole. But to see a fan base who had been through so much and they were having so much fun on Saturday night, that was fun to watch.
It was, and it's a classic case of tale of two halves because the Bears couldn't do anything right in the first half. Packers couldn't do anything right in the second half. And again, 21-3 lead at halftime. Do you know how many total yards the Packers got on their first 4 possessions after halftime? Total yards.
I saw it was like 20. I want to say 23. Well, it was 23 at one point. I thought I could be
9.
9. Maybe
Over
I
the first
don't know what
4
I'm thinking.
possessions of the second half, where they punted each time. 9. They got the one touchdown to push it to 23-16 with about 5-6 minutes left, and then the Bears obviously did what they did there, and that's really much in the identity of what this Bears team is, because almost all their wins, including the one they had against the Packers a couple weeks ago, where they had to come back, kick the onside kick and all that kind of stuff, they're built for these kind of things. You can never count them out. And I'm watching that game on Saturday, and they put together good drives. They just kept turning the ball over on downs. They had the one interception in the first half, but I still believe that they could come back, and I didn't see it maybe happening in that fashion, but nevertheless they did. And, yeah, the city of Chicago feeling pretty good right now.
803-404-6100. So those are your Saturday games. Now you fast forward to yesterday, and I thought yesterday was monumental for Josh Allen. With all the guys that are out, we all kind of look at him and be like, all right, this is your year. I don't know if you're going to get this opportunity where Burrow, Mahomes, Jackson, everybody's out, and you got these young up-and-comers. It look like Trevor Lawrence is ready to step in and maybe take your place. You got other young up-and-comers that are developing very, very quickly. And with that said, at least he gets – I didn't realize that stat that Buffalo had not won a road playoff game since 1992. Now, mind you, their losses were in Arrowhead to Kansas City. But that was wild to hear. But he gets at least the first round done. And that was a game that I really thought they'd win a little more convincingly. But it feels like Jacksonville is ready next year to take that step and be what I would say is a legit Super Bowl contender.
No, they overachieved with Liam Cohen, Trevor Lawrence playing his best football since he's gotten in the league. Like, the Jaguars are going to be around for a while, to build off of in this first year. I thought, going back to Josh Allen, it did end up being a touchdown. They scored a touchdown, the next play. But the tush push that went 10 yards to set up the final touchdown for them, I think was a perfect microcosm for what this Bills team is. They don't have a great defense. Can't stop anybody on the ground. The Jaguars ran for 154 yards against them yesterday. He's got some pieces around him like James Cook, but the majority of the Bills' success lies on Josh Allen's shoulders. And he's capable of carrying that team. And I think what you saw on Sunday is going to be kind of the MO for them in the playoffs, is if Allen's balling out, they're going to have an opportunity to win. If teams can figure out how to stop Josh Allen, the Bills are going to struggle.
803-404-6100 if you want to weigh in on those. Now you go to yesterday, the Eagles and the 49ers, and it felt like the Eagles season needed to be put down. Like, there was the defending champions. There had been a lot of good, but it felt like more bad. You got the whole Nick Sirianni, A.J. Brown situation that occurred yesterday, and then it felt like, that in that situation you had Tom Brady kind of defending.
They got a great relationship.
Yeah, they got.
I don't know about that.
And then you had who was the commentator? Was it Strahan? Why am I thinking it was Strahan? I can't remember if it was. Whoever it was for the crew there. I think it was the Fox crew. I don't know if that was Strahan. I don't think that was Strahan now that I think about it, but because I was walking off away from the television when they went to the television crew.
Yeah.
And whoever it was like, no, that's not good. And whoever it was said, I would not have responded well to that.
No, I wouldn't. And look, A.J. Brown had a very bad game yesterday, dropped some pretty critical throws. And if it was a one-off instance of that happening, I would just kind of chalk it up to, all right, it's the playoffs, heat of the moment, whatever. But this has been really since Nick Sirianni has been the head coach of the Eagles, even through making the Super Bowl and losing to the Chiefs, even through winning the Super Bowl a year ago. There's always been something underneath the surface. If it's him and A.J. Brown, if it's A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts, there's just something that's been not quite right about that Eagles team behind closed doors, and obviously played out in more of a public setting yesterday that I think really holds them back. Obviously, their offense hasn't been great this year. Defense has been really good, but they just couldn't finish drives yesterday. That ended up being the detriment. And San Francisco, and look, Kyle Shanahan is an offensive wizard, found ways to move down the field, get touchdowns when they needed to late. That trick play with Jawan Jennings throwing the touchdown to CMC was beautifully executed. And
CNBC?
What did I say?
No. You said CMC. I forget which announcer called him CNBC yesterday. I was like, no.
Not quite. But yeah, they got out of there. And that was going to be one of the toughest tests in the playoffs, was to go into Philly against that defense and come out on top, and they did.
Last night, did you get into that last night? It was kind of a boring game. I feel like I'll be honest, I felt like we were a little footballed out from some great games previously. The college football playoff on Thursday, Saturday being great games. The first two on Sunday. I got to admit, I went Landman. I had the secondary TV on the game so I could look over, but Landman was my most watched thing last night.
I was watching that game while putting together the shows and stuff, so I had it on and watching plays here and there. But look, the Patriots dominated and Justin Herbert. We're entering that range where we start questioning, can he ever get it done in the playoffs? Like, Matt Ryan lived this existence early on in the Falcons' tenure because they kept making the playoffs but couldn't win a game. They kept making the playoffs, couldn't win a game. It wasn't until the playoffs in 2012 where they beat the Seahawks and made the NFC Championship that they finally got that monkey off their back. And Justin Herbert is starting to get in that territory of, man, he can have a phenomenal regular season, but the playoffs are his kryptonite. And look, he's not getting help. That offensive line's terrible. Right. They ate him alive last night when it came to that pass rush for the Patriots. But Herbert's starting to get into that range of this guy can't win a playoff game.
803-404-6100 tonight. Steelers and Texans. I got to admit, I guess I watched for Aaron Rodgers, but it's the one game on that whole list that I was just initially was just kind of like
if you're expecting a fun shootout, I don't think this is the game for you. This game, and I thought we were going to get this last week with Steelers and Ravens because they always play weird games. This one's going to be like 18-12.
Yeah,
I feel like just a weird, odd defensive struggle. I think the Texans come out on top because I think their defense is that much better. And then tomorrow we're saying, is that it for Aaron Rodgers? Or the Steelers fire Tomlin? That's kind of what I see.
Okay. 803-404-6100 again. How you can weigh in if you want to do so on any of that. We'll come back. Jamie Bradford will join us. We'll go back to the basketball game from the weekend, the Steve Tannehill event, and the transfer portal. And Jamie, I believe, was over with Ashley Chastain Woodard and them yesterday as well, checking out their scrimmage. We'll get his thoughts on how that organization, how that program's looking heading into year 2 for Miss Chastain Woodard. You're listening to the Halftime Show. We are efforting Jamie Bradford coming off of a weekend in which he did retweet me earlier, so he knows that he is on the program today. So we'll get him. We'll track him down and talk about everything that was from the basketball game, which we have discussed, to the Steve Taneyhill celebration of life down in 5 points. That was so well done, a lot of fun, a lot of great people seeing Tyler. And joining us now to talk about that, we'll start with that. One of the highlights of the weekend, Jamie, was that incredible event. Kudos, thank you to Jeff and to everybody down there. So many people had a big part of it. Your thoughts and on how it went and just the fun had.
Yeah, well, first of all, sorry I'm a little late, but yeah, it was honestly, I don't say this lightly. I'm not just saying it because I'm on the air. It was one of the great honors of my life to be invited to that. I mean, I can't believe that Tabitha, Steve's wife, and obviously I know Jeff, but I can't believe that she reached out and invited me to that. That was amazing, well-deserved, earned for Steve. The Steve Taneyhill Remembrance Day, given by the Mayor Rickerman, who's an awesome dude. And Hank Campbell gave one of the great speeches I've ever heard. I mean, Hank Campbell's such an amazing guy himself. He's kind of like the spokesperson for that era of Carolina football. So well respected. It was awesome. That was an amazing event for Steve. We all love Steve, and we'll miss him. And that was well done.
All right, I didn't tell you this. I didn't tell John this. I didn't tell Jeff this. I kind of came up with this yesterday and then kept it to myself. I'm all in on Steve Taneyhill weekend. The university needs to do this for Mississippi State. Number one, Friday is the 18th, that Friday of September. Make that happen. Number two, you play Mississippi State. The very first victory, not only for Steve Taneyhill as the starting quarterback, but the first victory for South Carolina in the SEC. You get him here. It sets up well. I think we got to push this and make this Steve Taneyhill weekend. We could, Jeff can do something. We can do something. Everybody can do something on Friday to honor Steve, and then a big honoring at the football game on Saturday.
Okay. And then it'll have to be Nike. Nike can come up with the old school hats with the ponytail connected to the back too, and that
Nike
go
loves
to
it.
NIL or something. Yeah,
there you go.
Well, I was saying we can stir up a throwback jersey too from back then. That'd be cool. I'm team throwback all the time.
Yeah, I know Cornbread Cowboy wears his all the time.
We'll send him to Nike. We'll send him to Nike for them to look at him and figure out how to make those jerseys look like they're supposed to.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
The mesh look on jerseys was the best look.
The mesh?
The mesh.
Yeah.
See if you can do the mesh. Just have it.
A&M had the ones where they printed the mesh on there, so you can do that.
Have it for the 2025 year, or 2026. Yeah, I'm with you on that. All right. Well, it was a lot of fun. Again, kudos to everybody put it on, and obviously Patrick Davis for what he did. That was really good, and just all around great event, being there, as you mentioned, with the family and with the players and everything on Saturday afternoon. Unfortunately, prior to that, Jamie, you were there, I was there, the men's basketball game. 32 minutes of everything you want from Lamont Paris's team. 8 minutes, they crumble, fall apart. And as Tyler and I were talking, though, they missed open shots. That's the worst part. It wasn't that Georgia made some huge adjustment and South Carolina couldn't do it. South Carolina still was getting good looks. South Carolina was getting everything you wanted, and they simply couldn't make plays when the moment mattered the most.
I mean, it's nothing has changed about this basketball team and how I'm talking about for me specifically, and how you summarize their failures and their successes at all. I mean, it's been the same thing for a couple of months. If they shoot it well, they're going to win. If they don't shoot it well, they're going to lose. I mean, you can make the argument. I mean, I was sitting with John Whittle during the game, and I was like, man, number 2 for Georgia, they're going to have to get him in some foul trouble because they've got nobody who can guard that guy. You don't need him in there late in the game. Like, they got to find a way to get him out of the game. And he had 2 fouls in the first half, and so they sat him, I think, the final 7 minutes, and then he plays, and then he's a force in the last 10 minutes of the game, and Carolina went, ice cold, like 1 of 10 shooting or 1 of 13 or something like that, missing wide open shots. And on the other end of the floor, what were they doing? They were just feeding that guy, whenever they could, and he dunks all of them. I think he was 8 of 8 from the floor in the game. So you can go back and forth with, all the things that Carolina doesn't have on this team, and that's fine. But that's just who they are, and they have to hit shots. They didn't hit shots, and they lost. And, there are signs of encouragement, obviously, in the last 2 games. They won at LSU, and they led a lot of this game and had an opportunity to win it. The first half in the last 2 ball games has been remarkable. They've scored 90 points when you combine the first halves of the last 2 games. But they've only scored 58 total points in the last 2 games as well against LSU and Georgia. So they got to find a way to get the second half corrected offensively, and Carolina can get it going again.
Well, and Coach Paris made the point after the game that was a strong defensive effort. And you're talking about Somto Cyril, who had a career performance on Saturday with his 18 points. That being said, they still held Georgia 20-plus points below what their season average has been. So you had the defensive performance, and if you just do a few more things right on offense, you probably win that game. And the areas that we know that they've been good at this year have been 2-point shooting as well as free throws, and that just wasn't up to the standard on Saturday. And I know it's just one game, but there's a big difference between being 2-1, getting set to go on the road to Arkansas and Auburn, and being 1-2, potentially looking at being 1-4 when you're done with that quick little road trip. And I hate to say the season hinged on that game, but it was a big swing that could have gone in a positive direction that unfortunately came up short with.
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. In the league too. This league is. It's not like they're out of anything. I'm not sitting here claiming they're going to run out and win the league or something like that, but. This is going to be back and forth all year long with teams beating each other up. I thought maybe just a few days ago or even a week ago, I thought, man, if things don't start turning around, this could be just another rough season for Carolina basketball. Even after the loss the other day, I don't think that. I think that South Carolina absolutely has a chance to win a bigger share of games in the SEC than I initially thought, because the league is just going to give them an opportunity to do that. It doesn't mean it's a bad league. It's just a bounce-around type of basketball league this year, and it's obviously not as strong as it was last season. So they just got to get a couple of things corrected. But again, most importantly, y'all keep saying it. We can talk in circles all we want to. It's really one question that you can ask after every single game. Did they hit shots? And if the answer is yes, then you could go, okay, I'm going to guess that they won that game. And if the answer is no, they didn't, okay, they probably didn't. Yep, you're right, they lost. And they were 29% from 3 the other day. Lamont was all over it. If they're 32% from 3-point land, they'll win basketball games. And the other day they were just underneath it and they lost by 5.
Jamie, the big question is the big picture of this, because as I said, and in my belief, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Tyler's mouth, anybody here at 107.5 or anywhere, this is my belief. It's make or break year, and so there's no margin for error, and that's what stings the most about Saturday. You have this game, you're up 8, 62-54, 8-18 to go in the game. It didn't guarantee a winning season. It doesn't mean that you can have a losing season because you lost. But the margin for error is so thin that when you lose a game like that, I don't think it's just as simple as, all right, well, let's get the next one. You've got to have these games right now for the future of the program and deciding what direction Jeremiah Donati is going to allow this program to go when the resume is done in late February, early March.
Yeah, that's right. The margin of error is too thin for South Carolina. They didn't they haven't lost games this year, against lesser competition. We've seen that around here, obviously, plenty. They've won all of those games, but competitive basketball teams outside of LSU have beaten them. So, yeah, they got to come up with a few more of those. They have to find ways to close things out. And, Michi, they've got guys on this team that are leaders, obviously, but that's where your leadership has to really, really kick in. Lamont was all over it after the LSU game. Everything he said that he told Michi about, hey, when they make a run, you got to keep these guys calm and be able to sustain that, et cetera, and they did a nice job with that. It's a group of kids. They have 10 new players on the team. They don't know how to win together. It definitely don't know how to string together a bunch of big wins collectively as a unit yet. And hopefully they figure that out. If they figure that out, they're going to have a better year than people think they're going to have. But that margin of error is thin, and it closes quicker every time they lose.
Well, but see, that's the thing. They're going to have a better – there's 15 games left. Yeah, we are almost through. I guess actually they are through the halfway point of the season now, being 10-6 with 15 to go. You know, the season is what the season is at this point. There's no more like, all right, well, we'll turn it around, and that's my concern. Let me ask both of you this. We got about 3 minutes. Because of what happened last year in all the sports, not just basketball, but baseball, we know what happened there, football. And because basketball is kind of first on the calendar year, is there more pressure on Lamont Paris to win right now than maybe there typically would be? Because now it feels like when J.C. Sherbert says whatever that number was, 10-58 or whatever, and we look back at last year, it feels like, man, South Carolina athletics has never been at a worse point in my lifetime. I think a lot of people feel like that. And you start looking at this basketball being like, we got to clean this up first, and then we'll get to baseball in June, and then we'll get to you, Shane Beamer, in December. I'll start, Tyler.
I'll agree with that because by the time we get to baseball, you'll be almost done with conference play at that point, so you'll know what this basketball team is. So, yeah, it kind of sets the tone because, again, they got off to a bad start last year, and that's not the reason why baseball and football struggle, but they fell in line behind them, and we had the worst year for men's sports maybe in Carolina history. So, yeah, there's a lot of pressure on them to get things rolling out of the gate where you hope that momentum can translate over to the other two sports as well.
Jamie?
I see what you're saying. I don't disagree with what you're saying. The answer to that, obviously, from the outside world is yes, clearly. But I don't think that the basketball players themselves are viewing it that way in any way, shape, or form. I think the pressure that they feel is the pressure of the future of the basketball program because they not the future of the athletics department, baseball, football, whatever. I don't think they care about that. I think that they're more along the lines of like, hey, if we don't win, this whole thing in the future isn't this whole thing. It's an entirely new, different thing. So I would lean more of.
Well, that's what I mean too. I mean, when you say it like that.
Yeah, I think Bill, if you took one of those basketball guys, like, hey, do you feel pressure because baseball and football have struggled, and now y'all are the faces of the school right now to open 2026? They're gonna be like, I don't even know what baseball's record was last year. I don't think they look at it like that at all. I just think that it's more along the lines of, dude, if we don't get things going, none of us might be here next year.
Yeah, I meant more from a fans, not outsider, but administrative fans' perspective than is the team. They've got to do what they've got to do, and they don't need the pressure of baseball or football and how they performed. 803-404-6100 if you want to text in while we have Jamie on the line. We'll come back. Jamie was with the softball program yesterday, and 4 weeks from today we'll be setting up. I know Jamie will be just all in a tizzy because 4 weeks from today we'll be lining up the first week of the baseball season for the Gamecocks and Northern Kentucky. So we'll talk a little baseball with Jamie Bradford. You're listening to the Halftime Show. It is 2:35 as we slowly head toward the end of this program. Jamie Bradford joining us as he does each and every Monday. Tyler Head, Captain David Dare, and Bill Gunner. Welcome back, and talking with Jamie a little bit about basketball, talking about the celebration of life for Steve Tannehill this past Saturday evening down in 5 Points. That was so much fun. And Jamie, yesterday you had a chance, though, to spend a little bit of time watch a little bit of the preseason scrimmage for Ashley Chastain Woodard's ball club. We talk about not so much good things last spring and really going into the summer. That was one of the really fun ones to follow. She captured everybody's attention. They had a great run. If it wasn't for them being new, maybe we would be like, all right, they choked it away and didn't get to the College World Series when they were 1 out away. But we kind of enjoyed the run. This year, will there be more expectations, higher expectations? I don't know enough about this roster.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I mean, it was awesome to, be able to hang out with her and Katie and Zach and Jody and their whole staff. Carson, it's just an amazing group of people. If you know Ashley, you quickly will figure out that anybody that's working for her or playing for her is going to be a pretty good human being. So they got a great group over there. Kind of reminds me of Coach Tanner. And I remember, Coach Tanner used to say, "No, we don't rebuild around here with Carolina baseball." When he was in charge, he'd say, "No, we just reload." And that's where they feel like they are. I mean, they've gone out and got a bunch of good players, and they return a bunch of good players who've taken on some higher leadership roles. And obviously they have high expectations for themselves. They're going to challenge themselves tremendously again in the non-con, and they expect to win. They expect to win. They expect to be right in the thick of it, but they also expect a lot of people in the SEC, like when preseason predictions and stuff like that come out, they also expect to kind of be overlooked once again, because it was just 1 year. They haven't been able to string together, 2, 3, 4 years of consistency at that level. And so they think that they'll in the preseason be kind of challenged almost by others on the outside world looking in, and they get to go out and prove them wrong once again this year. But they're a lot of fun. I sure hope people will go to Gamecocks Online and become members of that Diamond Club. That's one of the great deals out there. $350 and you get 2 tickets to every game. I mean, that's awesome stuff. So they'll be going here soon, a couple weeks away from first pitch.
And speaking of that, like I said, 4 weeks from Friday, if you will be opening pitch for Paul Maneri and his team. And Jamie, Tyler, the top 25 comes out this week. I believe it was collegiate baseball that put theirs out. I believe it might have been baseball, but too many baseball polls, by the way. South Carolina not in it, not a surprise. I had John Whittle on last week. John doesn't know what to really expect with this baseball team. Have you started to get a feel for what Paul Maneri is working with in year number 2?
Absolutely. Yeah, no doubt. I mean, today's the first day of practice. I think their first scrimmage is on Friday the 23rd. And so we'll start to be able to watch them a little bit more. The D1 baseball poll is out today. 24 of their 30 SEC games are against top 25 teams, and that's in addition to Clemson and North Carolina being in the top 25 as well. So it's going to be another challenge. I mean, they should have more power offensively. Defensively, I think they're going to have to work through that and figure out exactly what they want to look like. They've got multiple options, and one thing you can give Paul Maneri, he can get them there defensively. That's kind of his bread and butter. He can get them there defensively, and then on the mound, their arms are power arms. The question I have, it's not a negative question. It's just that what I'll be watching for is how many of those guys are extended arms. Like, they've got a lot of guys that I feel like are 30, 40, 50 pitch guys, but how many of them can go further? And that'll kind of help you figure out what the weekend rotation will probably look like to start. I mean, if I had to guess, Jake McCoy and Amp Phillips and Riley Goodman probably have the leg up on all that. In what order, I'm not sure. But it seems like a team where they got a lot of quality arms who throw it hard and have 2 or 3 pitches, and they got to figure out how they're going to get through a weekend like that. And so I'll be curious over the next few weeks to see how they start to iron that out.
Of course, on the heels of the disappointment that was last season, Whittle had the in-depth piece about some things behind the scenes that weren't great. Maybe Maneri and staff not embracing some of the newer things of college baseball. Haven't really seen a whole lot out there about anything about that this offseason. Anything you can tell us about what might have changed or how they're looking at things differently heading into the year?
I think that part has changed, and I'll leave the floor to Coach Maneri to be able to speak on those things if he'd like to. But I think a lot of, everybody remembers that column certainly. But I would say that I think that they have made major steps in the direction which they needed to go, and that's from a positive standpoint. So give them a lot of credit there. The staff worked tremendously hard to get the players in that to be able to create the identity of the baseball team that Paul Maneri wants, which is power. And I'll tell you the other thing too. And here's I think the key for right now. Let's hope it stays this way. They're really, really healthy. They're really healthy. They had some guys who were banged up in the fall, and a lot of those guys progressed a lot quicker than maybe some thought. They're healthy, man. So they get to go out there and actually truly practice and compete. And they got to be able to compete at all these positions. That's the one thing that's really positive right now is they do have at certain positions 2-3 guys who are going to compete, and I think that'll help them. Now, do they ultimately have a great turnaround year? That's to be seen. But as it stands today, I think they feel good about the competition they're going to put out there.
He is Jamie Bradford. And before we let you out of here, just about 3 minutes left. Real quick, you and I discussed it a little bit on Saturday night as the Chaz Coleman news broke and his decision to attend Tennessee. But your thoughts on the transfer portal and the haul that South Carolina had over the weekend, at least on paper, and paper means nothing when you start playing games, but looks impressive.
Yeah, well, clearly, the group that's going to have the most scrutiny, without a doubt, is the offensive line. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But 5 of the 6 linemen they have signed to this point, we'll see if they sign another 1 or 2, right? 5 of the 6 linemen they have signed have 1 year of eligibility remaining, which tells you the type of linemen they were after. And a lot of these guys were team captains where they were. So they're after guys who've played a ton of football. It doesn't matter. I don't care about the program they came from. Guys who played a ton of football, who have leadership ability, and I'm pretty certain they were after a certain toughness as well. So, they wanted some guys who've been around and they've seen it, and they'll be able to bring them in and plug them in and create some competition and play. I think the running backs, the 2 guys they've signed from Ohio State and Penn State, I think that's an underrated group of kids right now. And I think, once again, you're going to have a very competitive battle at that position in the spring and in the summer and in camp when they get to the preseason. And then I think the defensive line guys that they've signed, I think those are really good football players. I think you've got a lot of meat over there now internally on the interior, and I think they're in a pretty good spot on the edge side. So far, if you ask, have they satisfied their needs? I think South Carolina, to this point, they've done a pretty nice job with that, and we'll see how the rest of it finishes up.
I do really like the defensive line. Now, I don't know what they're going to end up being. Travian Robertson is going to have guys to work with. But when you look at the guys that they have brought in on that defensive line to both add depth and competition, and that's what they are, depth and competition until proven otherwise. Jordan Thomas with eligibility, Kelby Collins, those guys, the young man whose name I saw Chris Clark had yesterday, I think on how to say his name.
We're just going to call him TD.
Yeah.
Tamiwa Dorajaye.
TD.
Tamiwa Dorajaye.
You could have said anything. I'd have been like, good job. That works. So I'm with Tyler on the TD. But I like what they've brought in on that defensive line and think it could really, it's going to be beneficial for South Carolina this year, especially those guys. And then you've got the young guys that J.C. Sherbert talked about last week. Aiden Harris had a pretty good day over at the Army All-American game over the weekend. Noah Clark's a big fella. Christian Ingram from 2 years ago. I like what they've got there on that defensive line. Jamie, we always appreciate it, but it was great seeing you this weekend, and hope to see you again very soon.
I'm glad you're doing well, buddy. It was good to see you. We'll talk to you all next week.
Take care. Jamie Bradford there, as he does each and every Monday, joining us. We'll come back. There's some PGA Tour news that I'm really excited about. We'll tell you about that, and we'll wrap everything up. Look ahead to tonight's Steelers-Texans game. It is the halftime show. About 6 minutes left here as we will wrap up on Monday, January the 12th, and get into the week. Basketball this week, South Carolina and Arkansas coming up on Wednesday night. That game, you hear it right here on 107.5, the game here in Columbia, 100.3, the game in Myrtle Beach. Pregame will be 8:30 with Derek and Casey, 9 o'clock tip time.
I hate late tips.
Yeah, I'm glad it's a road game. I can be all set in my recliner, and we'll see how that game goes. Arkansas and John Calipari, he's got a good ball club. They'll make the NCAA tournament. It'll be a test for the Gamecocks. I'll be interested to see, coming off of this past weekend, kind of where they are at mentally. Can they still sustain? Can Lamont Paris, does Lamont Paris? It's early. There's still a lot to play for. We can talk about it.
Sure.
You got to have a different conversation if you play in that locker room.
Yeah, you wonder, and look, we talked about this a lot last year, but obviously different cast of characters for the most part, but you wonder what a loss on Saturday where you knew you had your opportunities to beat a ranked team in your own building, nonetheless, how that carries over into a game, going on the road, tough environment against a really talented team, and we'll see what version of South Carolina shows up, but it's in your best interest to get yourself back in the winning column again, to quit sliding.
On Thursday night, mega event, and it took a little bit more of a mega. We'll get into more of this as the week goes on after Vic Schaefer's post-game rant yesterday with Texas, but it'll be, I have not seen, Captain Dave told us, what did Texas drop to in the latest? Do we have this in the latest AP?
So I know South Carolina jumped up to 2.
Yeah, I just realized that when we were, because I was like, well, it's 2 verse 3, and then I realized Texas lost.
Texas fell to 4.
So 2 verse 4. Texas will come to town on Thursday night. Monstrous women's basketball game. You can hear it right here on 107.5 the game. 6:30 pregame, 7 o'clock tip, and yeah, we're going to get some audio from Vic Schaefer, who apparently the SEC is out to get Texas. Maybe we can't get them in football. We're not going to put them down in men's basketball, but we can really stick it to them in women's basketball, according to Vic Schaefer.
Yeah, because the SEC just hates Texas, right?
Don't want them to do anything well. Don't want them to do anything.
What happened to just being a good team and playing your schedule? What happened to that?
Yeah, boy, if South Carolina complained about how they do football schedules for the last 20 years, we'd put Vic Schaefer to shame. So that's your game. And then Thursday night also we'll have Carolina Calls with Lamont Paris right here at 107.5 the game and 100.3 the game there on Thursday night. So a lot to get to. But Tyler, tonight, you mentioned it, Texans, Steelers. You hope to wrap up what's been a phenomenal, honest, I was joking last Thursday and Friday when I said it's the best weekend of football in 2026. I was saying that because it was essentially the first weekend of football, but it has lived up to it. And while I agree with you, it feels like this game tonight is going to be awkward and clumsy and something weird happens. You do have some storylines there with Aaron Rodgers still trying to go out a winner.
Yeah. Also, I don't know if Mike Tomlin's job's 100% safe either because, once again, they won 10 games, won the AFC North, but if you get bounced in the first round at home, no less, we go right back to the conversation of, all right, do you keep this going or is there time to make a change? So we'll see. Again, I lean towards Texans in this one. I think it's going to be a low-scoring, kind of a slog of a game. But, hey, they gave us an entertaining game last week on Sunday Night Football to wrap up the regular season. So maybe we'll get that tonight. We'll see.
Again, with Dawn Staley. Dawn Staley, by the way, we'll have Carolina Calls tonight. You can hear it right here, according to Captain Dave.
We were wondering about that.
We'll have Carolina Calls tonight with Dawn Staley as she gets set for that, and then Carolina Calls with Lamont Paris on Thursday. Back to the football game. You were mentioning it. Do we have anything left for Aaron Rodgers' career outside of winning a Super Bowl? Like, does getting to a Super Bowl, does winning a playoff game, does getting to the AFC Championship, does that change any of our perspective of Aaron Rodgers and his career, or is that story pretty much written unless he wins a Super Bowl?
I think it's pretty much written. And look, we're going to remember Aaron Rodgers as a Packer, right? We can go say, oh yeah, he ended his career a couple seasons with the Jets and maybe 1 or 2 seasons with the Steelers, but his career is written as a Green Bay Packer. I don't look. Could they win tonight? Sure. I don't see them going on a run of making the AFC Championship or the Super Bowl. I think Aaron Rodgers playing for legitimate championships in the NFL is over with. I will say, he seemed to have kind of found the fun in football again this year. That's kind of echoed with how they won that game last weekend against the Ravens. I could see him coming back for another season if he wants to, but I think the days of him being a title threat, same thing with Tomlin as the Steelers coach, I think those days are over.
Final few things here today. We mentioned it. Looks like the quarterback transfer portal nationally starting to slow down. It looks like Sam Levitt. I have not seen. Have you seen anything official? I just see where it says, according to ESPN, he is expected to join LSU.
Yeah, I don't think they've put out anything official yet, but if it's being reported, he's expecting. He was at the game last week when Carolina was playing in basketball with Lane Kiffin courtside, so it seems like it's going to happen.
Well, and it appears they circled back to him. They've given him a nice payday. Dylan Raiola now set to go to Oregon. Everybody thought that would be Miami, and that's kind of interesting now because all of a sudden, I don't know what Miami's situation is quarterback for next year.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like there was another quarterback that I heard that was kind of
there's
in the
still some
room
other ones out there.
There's plenty out there, but Oregon has gotten really good when it comes to the transfer quarterbacks, and it seems like Dylan Raiola is going to be the latest example of that.
And one other thing from today, Brooks Koepka returning to the PGA. Count me in as thrilled about this. This is great news. We'll talk more about this. PGA Tour set to get going this week, and Koepka expected to participate at the end of the month in a couple tournaments, and we'll be back on the PGA. We'll give you more information on that as to what he's doing tomorrow when we return. Y'all have a great day. For Tyler Head, for Captain David Dare, I'm Bill Gunner. It's been the Halftime Show.